Than to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, it's Friday the 31st of December. It's just gone 6 o'clock on your New Year's Eve. It's your Great British Breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. Here's what's coming up this morning. We'll be taking a look back at the year that was 2021, from the migrant crisis in the Channel to the Royals, to travel and the world of tech. We'll have experts guiding you through what changed in 2021 and what to look forward to in 2022. Bars, pubs and clubs in England are gearing up for what could be the biggest party night of the year. But with restrictions in place in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, will everyone be having a happy new year? And with a warning from health leaders that up to 40% of booked vaccine appointments are no-shows, we'll be assessing the state of the coronavirus pandemic as we head into the new year. As always, please do get in touch on all of today's stories. We love to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Good morning and thank you for your company. Let's start this Friday morning, for the final time this year actually. Let's take a look at some of today's front pages. Let's start with the Mail. On the front page, an Epstein victim's lawyer warns that Prince Andrew should be quaking in his boots following his friend Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction for sex trafficking yesterday. A similar warning from The Telegraph. A lawyer for one of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's victims declares that the Duke is not safe from justice, as it will prevail whether you're a president or a prince. Prince Andrew also features on the front page of the Daily Mirror, who reports he's been told to cooperate with the FBI over the sexual abuse claims against him. But the Daily Express reports the Duke's main fear is the damage the case will do to the monarchy and the Queen should it go ahead. The Independent, there it is, asks what is next for the Prince, while also predicting that COVID hospitalisations in England could rise to a peak in just 10 days. But the Scottish Times reports that NHS England officials do not believe the threshold for new COVID restrictions has been met yet, despite the surge in hospitalisations. They contrast this with the new restrictions imposed by Nicola Sturgeon this week in Scotland. The Guardian leads with continued coverage of the COVID test shortage, reporting that Health Secretary Sajid Javid is considering prioritising NHS workers to ensure that they can get back to work. The Star says, but how can he? That's the Star reporting that test hoggers are charging over £200 for a test kit in what they call daylight swabbery. And finally, in some good economic news, booming markets and widespread stimulus measures have resulted in 2021 being the record year for global mergers and acquisitions. That's according to the Financial Times. We'll get back to the papers in a moment, but let's take a quick look at what else is going on today. There is no need for any new lockdown measures to tackle Omicron. That's according to an NHS boss who says severe cases are remaining stable despite COVID case numbers hitting record highs again yesterday. Chris Hobson, head of NHS providers, said health service bosses are warning that people should be careful in how they react to the daily COVID hospitalisation numbers. Speaking to The Times, he said he understands why the government hasn't yet introduced extra restrictions due to a lack of a rise in severely ill older people. Yesterday, another 189,213 positive tests were recorded by the UK Health Security Agency. Up to 40% of booked vaccine appointments are no-shows, health leaders have warned, as the government says it has met its target of offering every adult a booster jab by the end of the year. The NHS Confederation says it's encouraging to see people coming forward, and getting their COVID-19 jabs, but said it has heard reports that some sites are only a third full, despite cases of the Omicron variant continuing to rise rapidly. Russia's Vladimir Putin has warned his US counterpart Joe Biden that imposing new sanctions over Ukraine could lead to a complete breakdown in relations. In a phone call late on Thursday, the Russian president said that such sanctions would be a colossal mistake. In the latest effort to diffuse tensions over Ukraine's eastern border with Russia, Mr. Biden told Mr. Putin that the US and its allies would respond decisively to any invasion of Ukraine. Police have launched a murder inquiry after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death in a park in South London. Officers were called to Ashburton Park in Croydon on Thursday night. The boy was given first aid before the ambulance service arrived, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The death is the 29th killing of a teenager in London in 2021, equalling the peak year for homicides of teenagers in the capital in 2008. A US schoolteacher says she spent 5 hours in voluntary self-isolation in a plane's toilet after testing positive for COVID-19 mid-flight. The teacher says she felt her throat hurt while she was travelling from Chicago to Reykjavik in Iceland on December the 20th. The teacher says she performed a rapid test with a kit that she brought with her, which confirmed she was infected. She remained in the toilet for the rest of the trip, and a flight attendant provided food and drinks to her. A fundraiser is limbering up for a marathon year as he prepares to run 26.2 miles every day of 2022. 52-year-old Gary Mckee hopes to raise £1 million for Macmillan Cancer Support and Hospice at home West Cumbria by taking on his biggest challenge yet. Mr. Mckee will set off from his home in Clayton Moor in Cumbria on New Year's Day for his first of 365 runs. That's incredible, isn't it? Well, to discuss today's top stories and the front pages, I'm joined by a panel today. It's nice to have some company. Today, it's John Smith, a sports agent and entrepreneur, and Morgan Schondemeyer from the Adam Smith Institute. Good morning to you both. Thank you very much for your company. I mean, there's one big story in town this morning. It's all over the front pages of the papers. It's, of course, that Ghislaine Maxwell trial in New York. Lots of questions, too, about Prince Andrew. So, John, let's start with you. How do you think the Duke is feeling this morning?
Well, he's probably learned how to sweat, I would have thought. Look, I was chatting earlier on with Andrew Eborn, who's coming on shortly to have a word with you. He's a lawyer. And we were saying that the burden of proof has yet to be given. So there is a desire for everybody to figure out what went on here. This is Rotherham on acid. It really is. It's got all the glamour and the colour of something which is horrible, and we all feel ashamed by the whole project, the whole Epstein lifestyle. But having said all that, Prince Andrew is somewhere in the mix. Nobody knows exactly where, and the burden of proof has to be given by the other side. So at the moment, I think she will probably, she's going to get up to 65 years. She's 60, so she's going to have to be one hell of a plea bargain to bring that down to something like 10 or 15 years and give her any kind of life. I think there's a lot of people going to be very worried. Andrew's going to be one of them. I just think he is one of them. I think it's a watch, wait and see. The burden of proof is on the other side, as far as Andrew is concerned. And beyond that, I think we've just got to wait and see what comes out on the next round of discussions with Ghislaine.
It is important to say at this point that Prince Andrew has, of course, denied any wrongdoing, and he isn't facing any criminal prosecution in the United States. Morgan, what I did find quite interesting about this trial was that we were expecting this massive show trial to last 6 weeks, and in fact only lasted about 3, and Ghislaine Maxwell didn't take the stand herself. Were you quite surprised at how the trial played out?
Yeah, it wasn't quite as dramatic as maybe a lot of people thought it was going to be. It seemed like it was quite under the radar in a lot of ways. I don't know if that has to do with just everything was happening a couple hours behind our news cycles here. But at the end of the day, I don't think the verdict was a surprise to anyone. She was clearly not in a good standing going into this. I think it's the justice that a lot of people were missing from Jeffrey Epstein himself. So I think that this is something that the victims of what happened will be glad to see this. And like you say, John, the next big question is, will she take a post-conviction plea bargain where she will essentially rat out her co-conspirators and these people who did such damage to these girls. And if that happens, then yes, maybe Prince Andrew will be one of those names, but of course we don't know.
A question to both of you. Do you think that she will name names in order to get a shorter sentence? Because one thing that I did find quite interesting about the trial was there wasn't any sense of her trying to make excuses for herself, and the way that the defence worked was trying to diminish the witnesses and make them unreliable. It wasn't ever a case that Ghislaine was ever under any coercion or ever put in a difficult position. I found that quite interesting. The thing is now she could be facing this 65-year sentence. Do you think she'll speak out to get that reduced? Let's start with you, John.
Well, I would if I was her. But I tell you the interesting thing from my point of view, Ellie, as well. The jury went out for 4 days. Now, if it was a slam dunk, I think that might have been a faster return of verdict. So there is obviously more to this. I mean, I articulated earlier about, we all think it's a bit, well, it is atrocious. I mean, grooming youngsters for sex is an awful situation. But there seems to be a little bit more missing. You were just saying, it seems to be a little bit, there's something missing somewhere, which I think is yet to come out. So I think we've just got to sit and wait. If I was her, I would absolutely sing for my supper. Yes.
Morgan, what are your thoughts?
Similar. I think it was an interesting strategy that she didn't come out and say, I was also a victim here. That could have been a strategy of hers, but clearly she has something weighing on her conscience, and that wasn't what she chose to do. I don't know if that kind of gives us a hint into her strategy now, but yes, I agree. If I'm facing the rest of my life in prison, I would probably tell some stories too.
Another really interesting story all over the papers today, it's on the front of The Guardian, is this lack of COVID tests. Could have a devastating impact, couldn't it, on NHS staff, John?
Yeah, I'm not a Boris knocker. In fact, I think he's quite a good bloke, actually, and I think the government have tried hard under some very onerous circumstances. But the one criticism I will level is that they do seem to be unprepared in certain circumstances. We heard yesterday about another group of Nightingale hospitals potentially being launched. That should have been done, in my humble opinion, 6-8 weeks ago. They must have known, pushing the vaccine and the testing program heavily over the last 6 weeks, they must have known that they're going to need more testing and more vaccines. They seem to have covered the vaccines well, but the testing situation is now testing. And that shouldn't have happened. And it is sad because, you travel, you do, if you're not vaxxed completely, then you absolutely need to test. And so please, chemists, wherever you are, lay your hands on whatever you can and get those tests out there.
There is this sense, isn't there, that this could have been avoided. I mean, the government is asking us to regularly test, and there are no restrictions here in England, at least, but they're saying that if we are going to New Year's Eve parties tonight, then we should be testing. So there really is no surprise that there has been this push for more tests. But of course, the question is, how do we deal with this now? Morgan, what do you think? Do you think that NHS workers should be prioritised for these test kits?
I can see the argument. If you're going to need people to be working on the front lines, they're not only going to be exposed more frequently, but my understanding is that if you have shift workers, 1 or 2 or 3 people being out at a time causes devastating knock-on effects. So I can see the argument. I think whenever you get into prioritizing, whether it's tests or vaccines or whatever, for a certain group of people, that can, be a slippery slope. Once the nurses get their extra tests, we're going to see teachers asking for them and, lorry drivers and on and on and on. So I think the bigger issue here is increasing capacity overall. And like you say, John, we have had these issues before. This is not a surprise. we've been juggling all of these balls for 18 months and we keep dropping the same ones on testing. So this isn't a surprise. When you ask people to get tested, when you have people going home for Christmas to maybe elderly relatives, you're going to see an increase in demand. So the fact that we've not prepared for this is, unfortunately at this stage, wholly unsurprising.
Another vaccine story this morning is this headline that up to 40% of coronavirus vaccine appointments are no-shows. Pretty shocking, John.
Yeah, I don't quite understand that. I think I do kind of understand anti-vaxxers. It is untried and untested. No, that's not altogether true. It's tried and tested, but only to a limited degree. So I understand the anti-vaxxers. I really think they should take a second look at themselves for the better good of society. I mean, I've had all three. I had reactions to them all. So it's obviously doing something. I'm a little bit queasy now that they're starting to talk about a fourth one even. You know, I kind of think that, I think next year, COVID is actually not going to be the all-embracing negativity that we've experienced for the last 2 years. I think it's getting weaker. I think the Omicron virus, the evolution of the virus into Omicron and beyond is going to show that there is a tendency, and pandemics normally don't last for longer than 2 or 3 years anyway, if you look back over history. I think we're going into the weaker phase. So I would encourage everyone to do whatever they can to be vaxxed. If you're really anti it, take tests regularly and just behave like a responsible citizen. That's all we're asking for.
Optimism from you there, John. It's lovely to hear. I really do hope that 2022 is the end, or at least the start of the end of this pandemic. So, Morgan, what do you think looking ahead to 2022? Do you think that we could be locked down again, or at least be under some form of restriction, or are you hopeful, like John, that this could be the beginning of the end?
I don't see any justification for another lockdown, and that's for a few reasons. Mostly that we have the vaccine and the boosters, as you say. This completely changes the way that the virus interacts with us, how sick it makes us, how transmissible it is, all of that. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but there's an increase in cases, an increase in hospitalizations, but at the same time, those are not translating into deaths and severe cases, which is a good thing.
You're absolutely right, by the way. I think day before yesterday's figures were 200,000 in the UK, 200,000 plus, that's Scotland, Wales and England. 815, I believe, were hospitalised and 1 died.
Yep.
So, you know, someone dying is awful in any case. But those numbers don't scare the population. I don't know, maybe they do.
Right. Well, the thing here is when the epidemiological and political decision was made to lock down in March 2020, that opened the floodgates, and that's how we kind of ended up with lockdowns 2 and 3, which at the time, again, we didn't have vaccines, we didn't have boosters, a completely different world. As you say, Omicron is less serious, it's, you know, more transmissible, but so are a lot of things. So I don't see the justification for another lockdown. I think the work from home directive, if you can, is kind of the new direction we're going anyway. So that could be a sensible measure for people who are willing to and have the facilities at their home to do so. But other than that, I think, yes, just keep testing and, you know, isolate if you're sick.
And hopefully this can be the end of what has been a very, very long tunnel. It is New Year's Eve. What are you two planning on doing tonight? Have you changed your plans?
We were talking about that before. Very little, actually. I was going to a New Year's Eve party, which is cancelled. I'll be sitting at home with my wife and kids, and yeah, that will be. We will raise a glass between ourselves.
That sounds lovely. And what about you, Morgan?
We're having a few friends over to ours with some food and games and things. Very, very low key.
Yeah, I get the sense that lots of
games.
people are doing that.
We should all play games. Definitely do games.
Well, whatever you're doing, have a lovely, lovely time. And to everyone who's watching at home as well, I hope you have a lovely New Year's Eve, however you are planning to spend it. John and Morgan are going to be with us for the rest of the morning. Thank you very much, the two of you, for running through the front pages with me there. Coming up, Andrew Eborn and I will be reflecting on 2 years of the COVID pandemic and hundreds of years of pandemic panic across history. But first, let's get the weather for you.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning and welcome to your New Year's Eve weather forecast. Here are your headlines. Through today, it's breezy, the wind's picking up later, some brighter skies as rain fades away. Now, the weather front down towards the southeast will clear quite quickly through the morning, but this one across the central belt of Scotland will continue to deliver clouds and some outbreaks of rain, but even here we'll see the rain waning through the afternoon. Wherever you are, though, it's going to be a breezy one. So through the morning, that rain clears towards the southeast, some brighter skies, but cloud racing across the country with a keen breeze. The rain across central and southern parts of Scotland, northern England will tend to die out in situ, and drier skies for Northern Ireland, brighter moments for the far north of Scotland. But look at these temperatures through the afternoon. 9 across the far north, but elsewhere where we see that milder air coming in around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, temperatures we normally see during April rather than at the end of December. So if you are stepping out through New Year's Eve evening, many areas will be dry. Yes, a lot of clouds, some spits and spots of rain where the clouds thick enough, particularly over the hills and mountains. And then more rain around midnight, just clips the north and the west of the country. The winds, though, will be a main feature of the weather. Gales likely across more western parts. And generally speaking, it will be, again, a mild evening and a mild night. So through New Year's Day first thing, we'll see some brighter skies, central and eastern areas of England and Scotland. This band of showery rain will just travel quite quickly across the country. So certainly through the afternoon, it will clear the shores of eastern parts of the country. And further west, we'll see some brighter skies, but it will be windy wherever you are. A real significant breeze coming up from the southwest, and temperatures typically through the afternoon, again around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius. So that's the picture through New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. Through New Year's Day, as I said, brighter skies either side of that showery rain band, and then things turn colder from the north with gales in the south on Sunday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Good morning, you're watching The Great British Breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. The time has just gone 6:24. Now, the first 2 cases of COVID-19 were confirmed in the UK on the 31st of January 2020. This is when the pandemic officially started. Well, now it's starting to feel like wearing masks and social distancing is the norm. But if we look back at pandemics we have got through, it does show that we will get through this. Well, to look back at the history of pandemics and what we have learned, I'm delighted to be joined by broadcaster, lawyer and futurist Andrew Eborn. Andrew, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for keeping me company.
Oh, I love keeping you. And I'll tell you what, what's even
today.
better, Ellie, and I've loved seeing you over the festive period as well. We always coordinate. Come on, we've got the pink going on, the red to match my eyes. It's got to be good.
And you've got a lovely pink bit on the back of your jacket as well.
No
which
messing
nobody can
there.
see, I don't think, but yeah, we're always coordinating. Well, it's lovely to have you with me, so thank you very much. And we're going to be looking back at pandemics, because this isn't the first time we've been around this road.
It's certainly not the first time, and people always say, learn the lessons. Lessons are to be learnt. And the reality is that people don't learn the lessons from history. And if you look back, all of the clues are there. We've had pandemics for ages. I mean, if you take us all the way back to the Roman times and before that with the cavemen, they've got examples of those sort of situations where there have been those pandemics. Most recently, talk about the Black Death. The Black Death, 1346. What happened? It travelled from Asia to Europe. There's a pattern here on that sort of basis. It ended in about half of Europe's population being wiped out, completely wiped out. That, as a result, ended in labour shortages. So the working conditions for workers got better because they were in less people being able to work. And it ended, actually, what it ended was serfdom. So the whole thing about serfdom beforehand in that sort of period of time ended as a result of that sort of pandemic. We then also had, several years later, within London, we had the Great Plague of London, 1665.
Yes.
You remember all of that? And there was a mass exodus from London led by King Charles II. And the plague started in April 1665, and it spread rapidly. What was really interesting is this is another example of the spread of misinformation. I always say it's like a war against the pandemic. So a war against the pandemic, the first casualty in any war is the truth. Now, what happened is it was put out by the mayor at that time was a guy called Sir John Lawrence. Sir John Lawrence was the mayor, and he thought that all the bubonic plague and the Black Plague was caused by dogs and cats. So he ordered the destruction of all the dogs and cats. And Daniel Defoe, in his Journal of the Plague Years, he estimated that 40,000 dogs were slaughtered and 200,000 cats. Now, the crazy thing, the damage caused by that misinformation was that the real perpetrators of this were the rats who were carrying the fleas. And of course, as a result of destroying the cats and the dogs, then the rats increased in population, so it got far worse.
Isn't that interesting that you can almost see the same patterns emerging? I mean, history literally has been repeating itself and continues to.
And you're absolutely right, but it's that interesting thing about misinformation. And so when people spread misinformation, and this is what happens, they say the truth is always the sort of first casualty in this sort of situation. So always we need to question everything. Let's look at the science, let's make sure, because we're drowning in a sea of information, most of which is false. What you tend to find, and I always say you need to check all your different sources for everything. Get your news from many different sources.
Of course, we have social media and that whole new world that we've never had to contend with before, have we?
And you're absolutely right. And what happens, Ellie, is that people go to places to confirm their own prejudices. So whatever view, however distorted and bizarre it might be, you will find evidence to support it.
You create your own echo chamber.
Yeah, of course you do.
We all do.
Of course you do.
It's absolutely fascinating. And of course, we had, what I'm kind of looking forward to is with the Spanish flu in 1918, we had the Roaring Twenties afterwards. We're in 2022, we're going into 2022. Do you think there's a sign of that to come?
I'll tell you what,
light at the end of the tunnel?
There's lots of light at the end of the tunnel, and this is the really positive thing, as long as we learn those lessons from history. So you mentioned the Spanish flu, because that's another example. As you say, 1918, it was wrongly called, and we should set the record right, because we can end the year in a positive basis. Spanish flu, you might remember at the beginning, we were labelling things, it was the Chinese virus, you remember that sort of stuff. We then changed all the way over to Greek letters, and they missed a few out along the way, which people got excited about. It was wrongly called the Spanish flu, and the reason it was wrongly called was all because of a chap called King Alfonso XIII, who's the Spanish ruler at the time. He contracted it. But actually, this started in Kansas. We're going to set the record straight. Okay. It started in Kansas, so could call it the Kansas cough, go for the alliteration. But what happened, and then they'd spread to France and Germany and the UK. But because coming out of the war, there were media restrictions, a lot of those people wouldn't report the cases. Poor old King Alfonso XIII, because they didn't have those restrictions, it got widely reported that the king, on a daily basis, this is what he had, and here's how he's progressing. So as a result of it, it was called the Spanish flu.
Well, we've learned something today, Andrew. I wasn't even aware of that.
See? We're going to set the record straight. This is our mission. We're going to set the record straight to end the year. So no longer call it the Spanish flu. We can call it the Kansas cough. Or the 1918 flu. The good thing about it, it does give us certain lessons. Because it naturally progressed. And it lasted about 2 or 3 years, which tends to be the normal mutation of these sort of things. And it then naturally died out, because it got weaker and weaker and weaker until effectively either people, the herd immunity that people spoke about, and effectively sort of disappeared. The great news is that after that terrible period and massive, massive casualties, 50 million died, 500 million affected, it did, as you rightly say, lead into the roaring 20s, a period of phenomenal growth and excitement, and we're going to get there.
I hope so, because, I mean, that's what people are going to be asking today, isn't it? And for the rest of 2022 is, when are we going to see the end of this? This has been going on, we're coming into our 3rd year now. If it's anything like the 1918 flu, we'll call it now, hopefully we're nearing the end, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, and that's why I say look at history. Most of these things take 2 to 3 years. They all evolve. I think the reality is this is not the first time we've had a pandemic. It won't be the last. Breaking news, shock, horror. So one of 2 things is going to happen. This normally mutates. If you look at the way that viruses work, they normally mutate into less strong versions of themselves. And that's why people are saying that Omicron may be more contagious, but actually less dramatic in terms of consequences. So that tends to follow sort of pattern. What's interesting, and this is where some people talk about whether it was lab created, and this is going to be revealed.
There's a lot of that sort of come, isn't there?
There's a lot of that sort of stuff. But what's happened there is that it's mutating. Some people say it's mutating like bacteria. And bacteria fragments as opposed to viruses, which have a pathway, which is a predictable sort of pathway. So we can see that sort of side. What I would say is that we can all help contribute to getting rid of that. And we can help contribute. You either work on the basis that you're self-isolating, you're not getting in contact, you can do things. It's a personal choice, but personal choice doesn't necessarily mean freedom from consequences. So absolutely, it's freedom from choice, freedom of choice. You decide what you want to do, but it's not freedom of consequences. And the impact on society, when you look about the people who are in hospitals at the moment, we talk about coronavirus at the moment, the big casualties, the people in intensive cares, 90%, if you hear the statistics, are people who have not had a jab yet. Now, I understand people have their own reasons as to why they don't want to do it, but let's look at the science, let's look at the evidence. So we do need to look at that sort of basis. There was, going back to heroism in the midst of horror, if you go back to the Black Plague and that sort of stuff, there was a village, which I should give a shout out, so we're going to raise all sorts of awareness here, a village called Ireham in Derbyshire. And what they did, they received a package of old clothes from London, the rat-infested London, which it was, with lots of different fleas, and they all caught the Black Plague. What they did, selfishly, or selflessly rather, is they all self-isolated. The sad thing is, there were 259 dead out of the whole 292 inhabitants. And this is the little village in Derbyshire, as I say, several years ago during the Black Plague. They celebrate or commemorate or remember every year since. There's a little village there. We should go down. We should do a GBNews special.
We should.
Down in this thing. It tastes, I'll tell you what it is. We'll pencil it in. Sunday service in Ireham. I hope that's how you pronounce it. It's the last Sunday in August, when they remember these people who did this selfish act, who self-isolated. Most of them died, but it stopped the spread.
What an amazing story, Andrew. As always, engaging and very entertaining. Thank you very much for your company. And you're with me all morning, aren't you?
I'm with you all morning.
Keeping me company. Thanks very much, and we'll be back to you in the next hour. Now, data produced by the United Nations claims in November, over 84 million people have been forced out of their homes globally. The UN claims the pandemic may have caused migration figures to rise to record highs this year. On Christmas Day, 70 migrants crossed the English Channel in 3 boats from France. But where do the migrants go when they cross the English Channel? And when will a resolution be introduced into the legal system? Well, joining me now is former Chief Immigration Officer for the UK Border Force at Calais, Kevin Saunders. Kevin, good morning to you. Happy New Year. Thank you very much for your company this morning.
Good morning, Ellie. Happy New Year.
Thank you. This has been an incredible year in terms of numbers, triple the number of migrants coming over in 2021 compared to last year. Why?
Well, because they want to come to they're coming to the United Kingdom for a better life. That's what they want to do, and we're the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Who are on these boats, Kevin? Is it women? Is it children? Is it young men hoping to come over and find work? What have you been seeing in your experience?
Well, if you look at the pictures, there are a large number of young men who I would describe as economic migrants. Yes, there are families as well. There are young children as well. I mean, we saw that a number of young children died when that awful tragedy in the Channel at the end of November occurred. So yes, there are women, there are children as well, but the vast majority are young single men.
Mm. And we've got to remember, this is a dangerous route, isn't it? I mean, as you just mentioned there, 27 people died in November. 7 of those were women, 3 of them were children. Really awful event that was. But a lot of this is down to the sophistication of the human trafficking gangs that operate in Belgium and France, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And we have to give Border Force some credit here, because prior to this, we had the people in the backs of lorries. Border Force, during my time, made that virtually impossible. So the migrants had to find another way across, and unfortunately, this was the only alternative open to them. So now we're seeing this movement from lorries to boats.
And there was talk about pushback techniques being used in the Channel. I have been down at Dover and I have seen Border Force agents out on the jet skis kind of practicing those pushback techniques. As far as I'm aware, they haven't been put into practice yet. They are quite controversial, aren't they?
Yeah, very controversial and very dangerous as well. I'm not.
Looks like we may have lost Kevin Saunders there. I was really enjoying that conversation. Really hoping we can reconnect. Oh, it sounds like Kevin Saunders is back with us. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Kevin,
yes, I can hear
you just talking about pushback techniques?
I don't think it'll happen. It's too dangerous, and I can't see individual cutter captains being prepared to take that sort of risk.
And I was looking earlier at the campaign promises for Brexit. Boris Johnson's government had a big aim to take back control of our borders. In a recent poll, 2 in 3 voters say that Boris Johnson and his government have failed to do this. Do you have faith in Priti Patel?
I think her new legislation is very good. And I do think that she has the options in the new legislation to cut down the number of migrants crossing the Channel. But what we have to remember is that it's not all in our... we can't do it all on our own. We need the French to start playing the game and doing more on their side of the Channel to stop this. Because if they don't, and we have to be realistic here, if the French don't do more on their side, you're going to have another tragedy in the Channel.
Kevin, I think you're probably right, and unfortunately this is going to continue to be a very big story in 2022. Kevin Saunders, fantastic to speak to you. Good to speak to you all morning about this. Thank you very much for your company. That was Kevin Saunders, former Chief Immigration Officer for the UK Border Force, 2001 to 2015. Fantastic guest to have on this morning. Coming up, 2021 was a big year in tech, not least because of the introduction of new things such as non-fungible tokens and the metaverse. We look back into what else could come back next year after a quick break.
Introducing Roxy's free TV music app, bringing your favourite artists home with over 70 million releases. The latest and greatest, all the genres, all the decades, exclusive music video channels, plus karaoke and games. So get the free Roxy music app, free on Fire TV, free on Google TV, free on Android TV, and free on Sky Q. Get Roxy free on your TV. See www.roxy.tv. That's roxy.tv.
Hey. You know that warm feeling you get when you help someone in need?
SOS Emotional Health Charity needs volunteers like you to support people who are struggling with their feelings.
If you're compassionate and over 18 and have got a little free time, you can join SOS.
As a phone or email support volunteer, giving kindness and time.
Training, ongoing development and support will be provided.
Apply to join the SOS family today and turn your spare minutes into another person's lifeline.
When it comes to COVID testing for travel, Project Screen is a highly rated provider. We have the travel tests for you, whether it's a PCR test near you or a day 2 arrivals test. Our home test kits include next day delivery or visit one of our local testing pods. Book today at projectscreen.co.uk. Tests are reliable, results are fast, and there is customer support along the way. Project Screen by Pronetics, getting Britain back to travel.
Good morning, you're watching The Great British Breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. It's just gone 6:40. Thank you very much for your company. Now, bars, pubs and clubs in England are gearing up for what could be the biggest party night of the year. With restrictions lifted, it's hoped that New Year's Eve celebrations will bring an economic boost. Hospitality bosses in the northeast of England hope that partygoers facing Scottish restrictions will choose to spend their money south of the border. Yes, and there are certain locals who will be making the most of their freedoms. Well, our Northeast of England reporter Rachel Sweeney sent this report from Newcastle.
Newcastle is a destination party city. Clubbers from across the UK and around the globe head to Geordieland to bring in the new year. It's known for its warm welcome and cheap pints. It's a huge night for hospitality, tourism and our local economy.
We've got nightclubs, we've got late night bars, and there is of course that element of going out. We've got great restaurants, we've got Michelin-starred restaurants now, we've got a lovely theatre, we've got beautiful scenery now. You're walking on the river in the area and going to the coastline. You can come here for 2 or 3 days, you can have a booze-fueled evening, but you'll have a lot of fun around it as well, and you can make Newcastle a really fun place to go away for a couple of days. Let your hair down, and if you come from Scotland, you'll be welcome with open arms.
Ollie Volkard owns 20 northeast bars and pubs. 13 of them are in the centre of Newcastle. He believes the Scottish restrictions will bring even more partygoers from across the border.
I believe that will be a great benefit to us, Cumbria, probably I would imagine as far down as York, I mean, if you're in Edinburgh and you're celebrating a birthday or New Year's Eve or wedding anniversary, you just want to go for a meal with some friends, I think you jump on a train and come down, stay in a hotel, and I think that's really good for us.
The Newcastle local authority area has more than 250 bars and pubs. They employ more than 9,000 people. New Year's Eve is big business in our part of the world, but it's not just these party destination bars and clubs that are important or affected on New Year's Eve, it's also family businesses. Across the Tyne in Gateshead is the Nine Pins pub, where the general feeling is that we are ready for a big night out.
I'm just hoping that it goes as normal as possible. We are expecting a good turnout. But yeah, it's been a very difficult year to gauge anything. Numbers have been down on what you would expect from previous. There's been no cancellations through COVID. I think there is a need to gain confidence in certain aspects of the community. There is the elder generation that has gone up to build the confidence up again, but yeah, I don't think it's changed much in the northeast. No, not when you go to different places. I've worked around the country and travelled in different places, and we're certainly getting on with it more than anybody else, I think.
That's the northeast way.
Yeah, exactly.
And that feeling is echoed as we go even further into communities. Hyper-local hubs like this British Legion in County Durham have survived restrictions because of local loyalty.
The worry we have is because we do have the older people that come in and they do have health conditions. So when we do hear something's happening, we as a committee and a club make sure we do everything to make them feel comfortable enough to come in. Thankfully, they haven't been put off about it, because when we reopened last year after the first lockdown, they were straight in. And to be honest, they praise us for what we do. As difficult as it was at the beginning, our regulars have continued to come in, and we can't thank them enough, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't still be here.
From world-famous night spots to your local Legion, the message this new year is very clear. The northeast of England is open for business.
That's Rachel Sweeney, our reporter there for us. Do let us know how you're spending your New Year's Eve. Have your plans changed? Will you be going out to nightclubs tonight, or will you be spending it indoors? Do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll share some of those later on in the programme. Now, whilst we have spent much of the year in lockdown, many of us will have been sat in front of a computer screen for longer than normal. And during these 12 months, there have been plenty of developments in technology. Facebook renaming themselves as Meta, the metaverse and non-fungible tokens. There's so much to get our heads around in the world of tech. Well, Will Guyot is a tech journalist and he joins me now. Good morning to you, Will. Happy New Year.
Good morning. And you?
Well, I want to start with the rise of TikTok, because it was around in 2020, but I think it's absolutely exploded this year. I think it's the fastest growing social network on the internet. You'd know better than I would. What is the secret behind its success, do you think?
TikTok has just become an absolute phenomenon, and actually in 2021 it's become the most used part of the internet. Until this year, that was always pretty much Google, since Google came around in the late 90s. But for the first time ever, TikTok's overtaken it. And I think the thing about TikTok is it's the short video format. It's the fact that so many people are now on the platform. And also, until recently, it's been kind of like the place where the very young hung out, the sort of 15 to 25-year-olds, but it's getting the audience is kind of expanding and extending now, and all age groups are getting involved. And there's something quite fun about the sort of shareable videos, and they're easy to digest. You can, when the break's on GB News, you can have a quick peek at that and then come back to the show. It's that kind of content that's really keeping people interested.
And the algorithm's so clever, isn't it? I mean, it really does show you what you would be interested in. And I think it's funny how you can't actually see the time when you're scrolling through. It's just so easy to get lost in a stream of really entertaining videos.
Well, that's the concern. Some people would say that is an amazing piece of programming, and some people would say that is a very clever algorithm that's deliberately keeping you hooked to that platform. The one bit of assurance I can give anybody listening to this who's worried about TikTok is they actually seem to be the social media platform right now that's definitely making the right noises to governments, to childcare organisations, to everybody else. They're trying to put limits in place. They're trying to behave as a responsible social media company, where we've seen previously, and I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, some of the other social networks may not have been appearing, they may have been saying the right words, but the actions might not have been following them. It appears that TikTok has the actions currently to back up the words.
Well, another big moment of 2021 was Facebook renaming itself to Meta. What was that all about?
Well, there's two sides to this story. It's been the worst year ever in Facebook's 15-plus year history in terms of reputational damage and concern about the platform. Just about the week before, Facebook decided it was going to change its name to Meta, which it said would better encompass the fact that Facebook isn't just Facebook anymore. It's got WhatsApp, it's got Instagram, it's got all sorts of other platforms. The company was going through its largest reputational damage ever when the Facebook whistleblower came through. Somebody that was saying the company was really torn about putting profits before people. Somebody that was also saying there were serious concerns about safeguarding and safety of users, particularly on Instagram, its photo platform. So the week after, Facebook comes out and says, hey, we've renamed ourselves as Meta because we're getting into the metaverse. Now, you wouldn't be alone if at the start of this year you didn't know what on earth the metaverse was. But now it's probably the most popular buzzword in tech. And the challenge with what is the metaverse, the answer actually is it depends who you are and how you're describing it, because it's so new and so fresh. Nobody has really given it an absolute definition. But if I was going to try and do it this morning, I would explain the metaverse as a new layer that sits on top of the internet. There's going to be an element of the internet where you interact with people in either a virtual reality headset, augmented reality glasses, or use a different device to use the internet to your phone or to your computer. It's the idea about if you be sat in a room talking with somebody. GBNews, for example, you could be having a show, we could be sat there, you could be presenting the show, but you could also be chatting to presenters at the same time if you were a viewer. That's the type of thing they're trying to create with the metaverse. And tech companies are getting really excited about it. And Silicon Valley investors are getting even more excited about it. They all think this is the future of the internet. And I'm not convinced yet. I don't necessarily know if this is going to be the thing that everybody's going to want to do. Maybe it's a generational thing, but the idea of wearing a headset all day sounds pretty miserable to me. But everybody else seems to be getting pretty excited about it.
So lots of people getting excited about that. What excites you? What are you looking forward to in 2022?
Yeah, it's really tricky. People always ask me that every year, and my normal response is give me a week and I'll tell you exactly what I'm excited about. Because from the 5th to the 8th of January, you have an event called the Consumer Electronics Show, which runs in Las Vegas. This is an event where in a typical year, 200,000 plus people come to Las Vegas, pound the floors of all of the big shows and the venues and the hotels. All the big tech companies are there displaying their products and showing stuff off. It was due to be an in-person event this year. It's still running in person, but many of the big companies like Amazon and Samsung and even Meta have said they're not sending their people and displaying there now, so they're moving their presentations online. But we're going to see all of the new technology for next year and probably about the next 18 months ahead will be at CES. And because we've had this big shortage of semiconductors this year, which has delayed everything from mobile phones to cars, I'm looking for some new innovation this year because COVID did delay the development of technology. I'm looking for some really exciting new items, maybe better mobile phones, maybe new, better TV screens, improvements in those sorts of spaces. That's the type of stuff I'm looking for in 2022.
Well, lots to look forward to. Thanks so much for coming onto the programme, and Happy New Year to you as well.
And you.
OK, let's return to the newspapers this morning to discuss today's top stories and front pages. I'm joined by a panel. Got John Smith, he's a sports agent and entrepreneur, and Morgan Schondelmeyer, who is from the Adam Smith Institute. Good morning to you both. So we've started by speaking this morning about the Maxwell case. That's all over the front of the papers. So let's talk about something else in this segment. We're going to talk about that Biden-Putin call about the Ukraine. John, let's start with you. Could this sever ties?
Look, I'm a very positive person. I want to talk, hopefully, as we go through the news over the next hour or so, we can put a lot of positivity, because there are some fun stories in the papers this morning. But this worries me. There are two things that really worry me about 2022. It's not COVID. I think that will become less dramatic this year. The things that worry me are Putin and Ukraine. He's very powerful. He's unchallenged at home. It's very difficult when you're in that position not to believe you can walk on water. He's there for life pretty much now. No one's going to argue with him. He walked into Crimea and we all seem to have forgotten that. and he's now very bellicose about Ukraine. And actually, in reality, there's not much we can do about it because we're not going to go to war over it. And threatening sanctions is probably not going to do a great deal either. He's threatened Biden nicely, allegedly overnight. China is another big issue. If you look at their global expansion into Africa, I mean, we only walked out of the Caribbean island of Barbados a week or two ago, no longer being, we don't have the Queen on their dollar bills anymore, and China are already there. They're all over the world. They've got a major export route through Pakistan, which was going to tax them financially. They want the port of Gwadar in Pakistan. That's their expansion route. But they also want Taiwan. And 63% of the chips that go into a lot of things that that affect our lives, like motor cars, come out of a 100-mile belt in Taiwan. And if they get that, they've kind of won without firing a bullet. And that worries me. And the other thing that worries me is the finances. I just think we are heading financially in this country, and it's all very well to look at Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew. Actually, most people watching this programme will be more concerned about their energy bills next year. And the finances, there's a story of IKEA in one of the papers today putting up their prices 50%. You know, people are going to struggle. And I think we need to focus on, the government need to look at that national insurance hike again and energy price controls, which are very difficult in a growing market. And by the way, Putin can turn the tap off when he wants as well, which is another issue. And I'm talking too much because really you need to say something now. But those are the things that worry me.
It is going to be a very difficult winter for a lot of families, especially with that cost of living crisis, and that has been all over the papers as well. Morgan, I just want a quick word before we move on your thoughts on that Putin-Biden phone call and the reaction in Washington. It must be causing some concern there.
Yeah, I think the issue here is, as you say, Putin has kind of reached a stage in his career, for lack of a better term, where not much scares him. And I don't think Biden really is in a position to be as strong as we would need. I don't think the UK is either. There's a story in The Telegraph about how Liz Truss says that Britain will help Ukraine become less dependent on Russian energy. I think that's something that Russia uses as a soft power tool, is all the oil and all the energy that they have. And I just don't think that whether it's Biden or Boris or Macron, I just don't think leaders are pointing out that Putin is an authoritarian who is not afraid of them, and we need to be a bit stronger. So I think those are my immediate thoughts, yeah.
Well, we haven't got very long left, but I do want to ask you about this story. Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales have obviously all got new restrictions in place in some senses, at least to get us through New Year. England, no restrictions yet. Do you think we're going to see people heading down on the trains into England tonight for a party?
Absolutely, and why shouldn't they? The one thing that has upset me about this pandemic is the politics being played by certain people. And I used to get concerned that Nicola Sturgeon would schedule her press conferences an hour or two in front of Boris, so she had the lead role every day, very clear. I never know why Boris didn't reschedule his an hour in front of her, but anyway, that's another story. And it's happening again. You know, Mark Drakeford, who was, you and I would discuss politics last year, and we'd go, Mark who? You know, he's there, and it's been a political platform for him and for Nicola, and I just want them to stop being political. I want people to go and live their lives and have a bit of fun, and it will be okay. I mean, who am I to say? But I just think that's my humble view.
Morgan, what do you think we're going to see tonight?
I think we're going to see a lot of influx from the border. So I think we'll see. I think you had a bit on it earlier about how the Northeast is preparing for Scottish revellers to come down. I'm sure we'll see the same on the border of Wales. And yeah, I don't blame them if they're taking the precautions that they need and they're as adults making a reasonable decision within the legal confines. Then yeah, have a party.
And Newcastle's a great party town.
And the Scots certainly know how to party, don't they? We had a guest on a few days ago who said you can't stop the Scots. They're going to be in the streets with their drams. So there you go. Thank you very much, Morgan and John. Thanks for that. And you're going to be with us all morning discussing the front pages. Coming up, as we've been discussing, is New Year's Eve. How can we celebrate as cautiously as Boris Johnson asks us to? Well, a top doctor will give us his tips after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning and welcome to your New Year's Eve weather forecast. Here are your headlines. Through today, it's breezy, the wind's picking up later, some brighter skies as rain fades away. Now, the weather front down towards the southeast will clear quite quickly through the morning, but this one across the central belt of Scotland will continue to deliver clouds and some outbreaks of rain, but even here we'll see the rain waning through the afternoon. Wherever you are, though, it's going to be a breezy one. So through the morning, that rain clears towards the southeast, some brighter skies, but cloud racing across the country with a keen breeze. The rain across central and southern parts of Scotland, northern England will tend to die out in situ, and drier skies for Northern Ireland, brighter moments for the far north of Scotland. But look at these temperatures through the afternoon. 9 across the far north, but elsewhere where we see that milder air coming in around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, temperatures we normally see during April rather than at the end of December. So if you are stepping out through New Year's Eve evening, many areas will be dry. Yes, a lot of clouds, some spits and spots of rain where the clouds thick enough, particularly over the hills and mountains. And then more rain around midnight, just clips the north and the west of the country. The winds, though, will be a main feature of the weather. Gales likely across more western parts. And generally speaking, it will be, again, a mild evening and a mild night. So through New Year's Day first thing, we'll see some brighter skies, central and eastern areas of England and Scotland. This band of showery rain will just travel quite quickly across the country. So certainly through the afternoon, it will clear the shores of eastern parts of the country. And further west, we'll see some brighter skies, but it will be windy wherever you are. A real significant breeze coming up from the southwest, and temperatures typically through the afternoon, again around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius. So that's the picture through New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. Through New Year's Day, as I said, brighter skies either side of that showery rain band, and then things turn colder from the north with gales in the south on Sunday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Sing along with your favourite stars when you try the Roxy TV Music app free today. Available on any TV. Stream music videos, music games, and karaoke. Try Roxy free today and claim a free karaoke mic. Go to roxy.tv.
We've all gotten a bit familiar with our homes this year, so it's time to get out of our four walls and love our neighbours. Through Love Christmas, people are reaching out across the nation to support those who are most isolated, sick, bereaved or otherwise struggling. By sharing bags of kindness, we can make sure no one feels alone this Christmas. Help us reach even more people by heading to lovechristmas.org. Love Christmas. Love your neighbour. We're in this together.
The Gold Bullion Company has been supplying gold and silver bars and coins to clients all over the UK since 1993. Once an option only for the super rich, more and more people are now ordering these products online with fully insured home delivery, and the gold items are VAT free. We'll bring you more on this story as it develops, or you can visit thegoldbullion.co.uk to see for yourself.
Open goal is the ultimate garden football goal. It stops balls going over and rebounds missed shots. As seen on Dragon's Den and a winner at the ISPO Awards 2019. It's a goal, backstop and rebounder all in one.
They think it's gone over. It hasn't now.
Try the Roxy TV Music app free today and claim a free karaoke mic while stocks last. Go to roxy.tv.
Good morning, it's Friday the 31st of December. It's just gone 7 o'clock on your New Year's Eve morning. It's your great British breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. Let's see what's coming up this morning. We'll be taking a look back at the year that was 2021. From the migrant crisis in the Channel to the Royals to travel and the world of tech. We'll have experts guiding you through what changed in 2021 and what to look forward to in 2022. Bars, pubs and clubs in England are gearing up for what could be the biggest party night of the year. But with restrictions in place in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, will everyone be having a happy new year? And with a warning from health leaders that up to 40% of booked vaccine appointments are no-shows, we'll be assessing the state of the coronavirus pandemic as we head into the new year. As always, please do get in touch. I'd love to know how you are planning on celebrating the new year. We love to hear from you, so it's gbnews@gbnews.uk. Good morning to you. Thank you for your company. Now, the UK's daily COVID case hit a new pandemic high yesterday of nearly 190,000 people testing positive. A further 332 people also passed away yesterday. That's within 28 days of testing positive. Moreover, hospitalisations in England are currently over the government's 400-a-day threshold that could trigger nationwide intervention. But so far, nothing's changed. And now it's New Year's Eve, and with fewer restrictions across England, thousands of partygoers are sure to descend from Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. So, will we be sleepwalking into a COVID disaster when the clock strikes midnight tonight? I hope not. Well, here to help me find out is Dr. Mckee, who is a GP from North London. Dr. Mo, hello, good morning to you.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Good morning. How are you? Not too bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you for asking. Dr. Mo, people will be asking, is it wise for them to go out tonight?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because we have been stuck indoors. We have been so challenged and so deprived of seeing each other and seeing friends and family for so long, for almost 2 years now, that I think people are desperate to have that occasion to see in the new year together, to spend time with friends and family. So it's a really challenging question. I think the most important thing really is we know that there is this Omicron variant which is flying around, which is so transmissible. And of course, that's where we have to be sensible and make sure that if we have symptoms, to make sure we obviously don't see our friends or family. And of course, where possible, try to get tested before you see each other, so you know it's a safe time together.
Dr. Mo, it's easy to say, isn't it? But it is quite difficult for people to test themselves with lateral flows at the moment because there's such a shortage. How do we solve that?
Yeah, there's no quick, easy answer to that question, unfortunately, because as you said, there's a huge shortage of lateral flows. The government gave the edict that we should have lateral flow tests and that they would allow us all to see in the Christmas and New Year period together. But they hadn't made the provision that everyone would be looking for them, and now there aren't that many available. So I think the main thing really is, if you are seeing friends and family, try to be careful and try to be safe. Be mindful of those who are most vulnerable. And it may be that still, despite the fact that you do want to see friends and family, the ones who are most vulnerable, we still perhaps don't see them socially at this time, face to face. Of course, there are other things that can be done and should be done in the meantime. Things like making sure wherever we go today and the next few days, we're still wearing masks, we're still getting ourselves ready and signing up for the booster program to protect ourselves and our loved ones. But short of coming up for tonight, really the key thing is being careful and mindful of who you're around.
Really good practical advice there. And as we were just hearing, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, they all have restrictions of some form at the moment. England has nothing. Do you think we are going to see this border hopping taking place tonight? People perhaps living in southern Scotland or eastern Wales would come across to England and party here. And then what impact will that have of them getting their train home tomorrow?
Well, I think the logistics is a different question for a different person, perhaps, but I certainly can see that happening. And ultimately, I think obviously if people are not breaking the law, then of course that's kind of in their hands. The question really remains whether we are going to follow suit, and I suspect we'll have to keep a close eye on it. I think the government is trying to allow people to have a degree of autonomy, and a chance to see friends and family in a really tough year. But we have to be mindful, this variant is not a joke. You know, we are seeing patients who just say, I saw someone yesterday with it, they told me today they had it, I've tested and I've got it. And it's that transmissible. So I think we have to be mindful that it may not be as, and the reports are showing it's not as dangerous, or it doesn't seem to be making people as sick as previously, but there are still people in intensive care, especially those who haven't had vaccinations. And we are seeing that it is still making us get unwell. Now, a few of us, that's not necessarily the biggest problem, but when it becomes a lot of us, that's when we start to overwhelm the NHS. And traditionally, Christmas, New Year's, January, February are a time when we're so busy and overwhelmed already in the NHS. So I think we need to have that element of caution and exercise a bit of control if possible.
Dr. Mo, people will be looking ahead to 2022 and really hoping to see light at the end of the tunnel. And you just touched upon there that Omicron is transmissible, but it certainly seems to be a weaker strain, at least. Do you think this is a sign of perhaps the beginning of the end, or is it a bit too soon to say?
I think COVID is going to be with us forever. I suspect that based on other viruses we've had of a similar nature. But what it will tend to do is continue to mutate and change. And I suspect we will continue to have vaccinations regularly, either yearly or twice a year, to ensure that we have the immunity, especially the most vulnerable. I think the thing to remember here is that the new Omicron variant being less dangerous doesn't always mean that future generation variants won't be as dangerous. But the point is that we are making massive progress with vaccinations, with now oral medications that patients can take if they're moderate to severe, and they're coming out, and they, I think, will have something to look forward to for 2022. So in many ways, we've been through, I think, the worst of it. I think we've been through the point where we didn't know what was happening, trying to scrabble for PPE, trying to scrabble for health support, trying to work out how to navigate social distancing and support and social welfare. And now we're at a position where we understand the virus more. We understand how it's affecting people. We're understanding the wider impact, and potentially building cures, and all of the research and development is happening in this area. So I think in that sense, we should be optimistic. I think we are aiming to keep the economy going. We're aiming to keep people in job, aiming to keep people out. We know mental health is such an important thing as well. And of course, that's going to be a major focus for 2022, getting our mental health back.
It's a great point to end on. Dr. Mo, what are you doing tonight for New Year's Eve?
I'll be sitting in with the family in a very socially, nice and calm situation.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I hope you enjoy your celebrations. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. That was Dr. Mckee. He's a GP from North London. Thanks very much to all of you getting in touch. We are asking today, what are you doing tonight on your New Year's Eve? Have your plans changed? Do let us know, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and I'll share some of those a little bit later on in the programme. Now, let's take a quick look at what else is going on today. There is no need for any new lockdown measures to tackle Omicron. That's according to an NHS boss who says severe cases are remaining stable despite COVID case numbers hitting record highs again yesterday. Chris Hobson, head of NHS providers, said health service bosses are warning that people should be careful in how they react to the daily COVID hospitalisation numbers. Speaking to The Times, he said he understands why the government hasn't yet introduced extra restrictions due to a lack of a rise in severely ill older people. Yesterday, another 189,213 positive tests were recorded by the UK Health Security Agency. Up to 40% of booked vaccine appointments are no-shows, health leaders have warned, as the government says it has met its target of offering every adult a booster jab by the end of the year. The NHS Confederation says it is encouraging to see people coming forward and getting their COVID-19 jabs, but said it has heard reports that some sites are only a third full, despite cases of the Omicron variant continuing to rise rapidly. Russia's Vladimir Putin has warned his US counterpart Joe Biden that imposing new sanctions over Ukraine could lead to a complete breakdown in relations. In a phone call late on Thursday, the Russian president said that such sanctions would be a colossal mistake. In the latest effort to defuse tensions over Ukraine's eastern border with Russia, Mr. Biden told Mr. Putin that the US and its allies would respond decisively to any invasion of Ukraine. Police have launched a murder inquiry after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death in a park in South London. Officers were called to Ashburton Park in Croydon on Thursday night. The boy was given first aid before the ambulance service arrived, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The death is the 29th killing of a teenager in London in 2021, equalling the peak year for homicides of teenagers in the capital in 2008. A US schoolteacher says she spent 5 hours in voluntary self-isolation in a plane's toilet after testing positive for COVID-19 mid-flight. The teacher says she felt her throat hurt whilst travelling from Chicago to Reykjavik in Iceland on December the 20th. The teacher says she performed a rapid test with a kit that she'd brought in with her, which confirmed that she was infected. She remained in the toilet for the rest of the trip, and a flight attendant provided food and drinks to her. And a fundraiser is limbering up for a marathon year as he prepares to run 26.2 miles every day in 2022. This is amazing. 52-year-old Gary Mckee hopes to raise £1 million for Macmillan Cancer Support and Hospice at home in West Cumbria by taking on his biggest challenge yet. Mr. Mckee will set off from his home in Clayton in Cumbria on New Year's Day for the first of his 365 runs. Tom Pursglove, the Minister for Justice and Tackling Illegal Migration, says a new law will be introduced making it a criminal offence to knowingly arrive in the UK without permission. This year, 27,000 migrants have attempted to cross the Channel. That is triple the numbers seen the year before, with 36 people sadly losing their lives. Well, despite the dangers, hundreds more have arrived this month, including 70 people on Christmas Day alone. So, what is the solution to this Channel migrant crisis? And will more illegal crossings be made in 2022? Well, Dr. Rakib Oshan is a research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining the programme this morning. It's very distressing, isn't it, the people that lose their lives in the Channel, making that really dangerous journey. We've seen those numbers triple this year. Why is that?
Well, I think that when we're looking at the illegal Channel crossings, I think something that's missed quite a bit, Ellie, or rather what's overlooked, is the treatment which is being dished out by the French policing authorities. I think that's something that's not discussed very much at all. I think that more generally, contrary to what many people may think, especially on the liberal left, of our politics, migrants who are crossing the Channel illegally, they are treated with generosity when they arrive in Britain, especially when it comes to the kind of accommodation that they are provided. So there are incentives in place. There is, of course, the reality that those who are illegally crossing the Channel, a notable portion already have people within the UK that they know, that's including family members. So there's various pull factors when it comes to discussing the illegal Channel crossings, and they need to be addressed.
Dr. Rakib, what is the answer to this then? We just heard Tom Pursglove, the Minister for Justice and Tackling Illegal Migration. He's talking about this new law that will be introduced, making it a criminal offence to knowingly arrive in the UK without permission. He thinks that's going to go a long way to tackle this crisis. But the sense that I'm getting from you is you very much feel like Britain is this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and perhaps it's the incentives that migrants get when they get here that need to be taken away.
Well, I think we need to definitely have a discussion on those incentives. I think also we really have to tackle the people smuggling infrastructure that we have in place in the UK. I definitely feel that the National Crime Agency, for example, should be provided with more resources to really get to the bottom of those people smuggling infrastructures. I would like to see much tougher prison sentences, or rather have a tougher sentencing regime introduced for those who are found guilty of participating in people smuggling infrastructures in the UK, because what they're essentially doing is they're making very sound profits, making a great deal of money by facilitating this process of illegal migration into Britain. So I think there's various courses of action which can be taken when we're looking at the illegal channel crossings. But I do feel, of course, we have to look at the kinds of accommodation that is provided. And I do feel that, contrary to what many people say, I do feel that there's a great deal of generosity being shown. And I think that's problematic. And I think there's a good number of people in the British mainstream who see that, for example, we have military veterans who are living without homes, but yet when they see this kind of accommodation being provided, they feel that's fundamentally unfair, and I think they have a point.
Dr. Rakeem Eshan, I wish we could have longer to speak with each other, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave it there. But thank you very much for your thoughts, and a very happy New Year to you as well. I'm sure lots of you will have your own opinion on what Rakeem Eshan was talking about there. Do get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, coming up, how did our travel habits change this year? We'll take a look back on the travel industry in 2021 and ask if it's finally going to thrive after 2 years of uncertainty. That's after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning and welcome to your New Year's Eve weather forecast. Here are your headlines. Through today, it's breezy, the wind's picking up later, some brighter skies as rain fades away. Now, the weather front down towards the southeast will clear quite quickly through the morning, but this one across the central belt of Scotland will continue to deliver clouds and some outbreaks of rain, but even here we'll see the rain waning through the afternoon. Wherever you are, though, it's going to be a breezy one. So through the morning, that rain clears towards the southeast, some brighter skies, but cloud racing across the country with a keen breeze. The rain across central and southern parts of Scotland, northern England will tend to die out in situ, and drier skies for Northern Ireland, brighter moments for the far north of Scotland. But look at these temperatures through the afternoon. 9 across the far north, but elsewhere where we see that milder air coming in around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, temperatures we normally see during April rather than at the end of December. So if you are stepping out through New Year's Eve evening, many areas will be dry. Yes, a lot of clouds, some spits and spots of rain where the clouds thicken up, particularly over the hills and mountains. And then more rain around midnight, just clips the north and the west of the country. The winds, though, will be a main feature of the weather. Gales likely across more western parts. And generally speaking, it will be, again, a mild evening and a mild night. So through New Year's Day first thing, we'll see some brighter skies, central and eastern areas of England and Scotland. This band of showery rain will just travel quite quickly across the country. So certainly through the afternoon, it will clear the shores of eastern parts of the country. And further west, we'll see some brighter skies, but it will be windy wherever you are. A real significant breeze coming up from the southwest, and temperatures typically through the afternoon, again around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius. So that's the picture through New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. Through New Year's Day, as I said, brighter skies either side of that showery rain band, and then things turn colder from the north with gales in the south on Sunday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
When it comes to COVID testing for travel, Project Screen is a highly rated provider. We have the travel tests for you, whether it's a PCR test near you or a day 2 arrivals test. Our home test kits include next day delivery, or visit one of our local testing pods. Book today at projectscreen.co.uk. Tests are reliable, results are fast, and there is customer support along the way. Project Screen by Pronetics, getting Britain back to travel.
The Sky Broadband January sale is here. Start the new year with a bang and get our January Fibre special for just £25 a month. It comes with super fast speeds and our outstanding service too. So brace yourself for our incredible Sky Broadband January Fibre Special with super fast speeds and outstanding service for the amazing value of just £25 a month for 18 months. New and existing customers, don't miss out. It won't last long. Go to sky.com today.
Does your business need a vehicle? Think Pink. We always aim to please. We'll arrange your lease and we'll do it all with ease. We have more leasing options than the largest UK provider. Choose from any make or model. And if you need help or advice on electric vehicles, think Pink. There's no admin fee to pay and you get free nationwide delivery. So if you need a car or van, think Pink.
Are you struggling with slow or unreliable broadband? Diva Telecom's 4G broadband could be just what you need. Our team of professional engineers offer full installation at your home or business, and as we use the Nobel network, there's no need for a landline. Government grants are also available to cover your installation and equipment costs. Give slow broadband the red card and contact Diva Telecom today for a free no-obligation visit and test at your home or business.
Do you dream of stepping out in style or escaping to luxury? Fifth Avenue is the new competition site which offers high-end items and experiences, prizes you really want. From beauty and fashion to lifestyle and wellness, travel and experiences. Simply pick the competitions you'd like to enter, choose how many tickets you want, answer the question, then wait for the live drawing. Visit fifthavenue.co.uk today and turn your luck into luxury.
Good morning, you're watching The Great British Breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. The time has just gone 7:24 and it's New Year's Eve. So we're asking you today, what are you doing for your New Year's Eve celebrations? Have they changed? Do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Just before the break, we were having a discussion about illegal migration into this country. In 2021, it was 3 times the number of migrants came over the channel than in 2020. Just had an email from Loz. She says, anyone who enters the UK illegally will never be given legal protection to remain. The end game is you will be removed. That should be the law. And the message. Thank you very much for that email. Do keep them coming in about your New Year plans or any of the stories that we've been covering this morning. We do really like to hear from you. Now, bars, pubs and clubs in England are gearing up for what could be the biggest party night of the year. With restrictions lifted, it's hoped that New Year's Eve celebrations will bring an economic boost. Hospitality bosses in the northeast of England hope that partygoers facing Scottish restrictions will choose to spend their money south of the border. And they're certain that locals will be making the most of their freedoms. Our northeast of England reporter Rachel Sweeney sent this report from Newcastle.
Newcastle is a destination party city. Clubbers from across the UK and around the globe head to Geordieland to bring in the new year. It's known for its warm welcome and cheap pints. It's a huge night for hospitality, tourism and our local economy.
We've got nightclubs, we've got late night bars, and there is of course that element of going out. We've got great restaurants, we've got Michelin-starred restaurants now, we've got a lovely theatre, we've got beautiful scenery now, walking on the river in the area and going to the coastline. You can come here for 2 or 3 days, you can have a booze-fueled evening, but you'll have a lot of fun around it as well, and you can make Newcastle a really fun place to go away for a couple of days, let your hair down, and if you come from Scotland, you'll be welcome with open arms.
Ollie Volkard owns 20 northeast bars and pubs. 13 of them are in the centre of Newcastle. He believes the Scottish restrictions will bring even more partygoers from across the border.
I believe that will be a great benefit to us, Cumbria, probably I would imagine as far down as York, you know. I mean, if you're in Edinburgh and you're celebrating a birthday or New Year's Eve or wedding anniversary, you just want to go for a meal with some friends, I think you jump on a train and come down, stay in a hotel, and I think that's really good for us.
The Newcastle local authority area has more than 250 bars and pubs. They employ more than 9,000 people. New Year's Eve is big business in our part of the world, but it's not just these party destination bars and clubs that are important or affected on New Year's Eve, it's also family businesses. Across the town in Gateshead is the Nine Pins pub, where the general feeling is that we are ready for a big night out.
I'm just hoping that it goes as normal as possible. We are expecting a good turnout. But yeah, it's been a very difficult year to gauge anything. Numbers have been down on what you would expect from previous. There's been no cancellations through COVID. I think there is a need to gain confidence in certain aspects of the community. There is the elder generation that has gone up to build the confidence up again, but yeah, I don't think it's changed much in the northeast. No, not when you go to different places. I've worked around the country and travelled in different places, and we're certainly getting on with it more than anybody else, I think.
That's the northeast way.
Yeah, exactly.
And that feeling is echoed as we go even further into communities. Hyper-local hubs like this British Legion in County Durham have survived restrictions because of local loyalty.
The worry we have is because we do have the older people that come in and they do have health conditions. So when we do hear something's happening, we as a committee and a club make sure we do everything to make them feel comfortable enough to come in. Thankfully, they haven't been put off about it, because when we reopened last year after the first lockdown, they were straight in. And to be honest, they praise us for what we do. As difficult as it was at the beginning, our regulars have continued to come in, and we can't thank them enough, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't still be here.
From world-famous night spots to your local Legion, the message this new year is very clear. The northeast of England is open for business.
That's Rachel Sweeney, our reporter there for us. Let us know what you're doing on your New Year's Eve. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Lots of you getting in touch. James says, messages, go out and enjoy yourselves tonight. Big capital letters from James there. Thank you very much for getting in touch. And we've had another email it just says from Jay. He says, hi folks, Sturgeon is a power-mad freak who has ruined our new year for another year. I'm getting a train down to York for me and a couple of friends. Let the party begin. Happy New Year when it comes. Thank you very much, Jay, for getting in touch with us. So please do keep on emailing in. It's on your screen there for you, or you can find us on social media, GB News. OK, let's take a quick look at what else is going on today. There is no need for any new lockdown measures to tackle Omicron. That's according to an NHS boss who says severe cases are remaining stable despite COVID case numbers hitting record highs again yesterday. Chris Hobson, head of NHS providers, said health service bosses are warning that people should be careful in how they react to the daily COVID hospitalisation numbers. Yesterday, another 189,213 positive tests were recorded by the UK Health Security Agency. Up to 40% of booked vaccine appointments are no-shows, health leaders have warned, as the government says it has met its target of offering every adult a booster jab by the end of the year. The NHS Confederation says it is encouraging to see people coming forward and getting their COVID-19 jabs, but said it had heard reports that some sites are only a third full, despite cases of the Omicron variant continuing to rise rapidly. Russia's Vladimir Putin has warned his US counterpart, Joe Biden, that imposing new sanctions over Ukraine could lead to a complete breakdown in relations. In a phone call late on Thursday, the Russian president said that such sanctions would be a colossal mistake. In the latest effort to diffuse tensions over Ukraine's eastern border with Russia, Mr. Biden told Mr. Putin that the US and its allies would respond decisively to any invasion of Ukraine. Police have launched a murder inquiry after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death in a park in South London. Officers were called to Ashburton Park in Croydon on Thursday night and gave the boy first aid, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The death is the 29th killing of a teenager in London this year. A US schoolteacher says she spent 5 hours in self-isolation in a plane toilet after testing positive for COVID-19 mid-flight. The teacher says she felt her throat hurt whilst travelling from the US to Iceland just before Christmas. The teacher took a lateral flow test that she'd brought with her and remained in the toilet for the rest of the trip, with food and drinks being given to her by the staff. And a fundraiser is limbering up for a marathon year as he prepares to run 26.2 miles every day of 2022. That is amazing. 52-year-old Gary Mckee hopes to raise £1 million for Macmillan Cancer Support and Hospice at home in West Cumbria by taking on his biggest challenge yet. Mr Mckee will set off from his home in Clayton Moor in Cumbria on New Year's Day for the first of his 365 runs. That's incredible, isn't it? Now, coming up, Andrew Eboyne joins me again, this time to look back at 2021 as the year of revelations. But what does that even mean? Hopefully I'll find out after this.
When I was on the streets, I didn't sleep. I was too scared. I just used to walk about from place to place. It's awful. I can't even describe it.
Tonight, too many young people like Kira will be at risk from violence and abuse, right here on our streets.
When I found Centrepoint, my whole life changed. I had somewhere safe I could call my own, and I had real support to help me get my life back on track.
Please call 0800 473 0171 today to sponsor a room at Centrepoint. As a room sponsor, you'll see the difference you can make with regular Centrepoint updates from the young people whose lives you're helping to rebuild. Please call 0800 473 0171 today or search Sponsor Room online and be the turning point for a young person like Kira. Thank you.
Come on, let's make this one shining all day. Let's make this world do everything you say. It's so easy and so fun to feel this way.
Create your perfect diamond engagement ring and experience Love Lumber's bespoke same-day diamond engagement rings at Lumber's Jewelers.
Introducing Roxy's new free TV music app. Unlimited music videos with 70 million music releases. Search the latest and the greatest from every genre and decade. Plus hundreds of exclusive music channels for you to sit back and enjoy. Plus music games and even karaoke. Try Roxy Premium and get a free Roxy karaoke mic. Get Roxy free. See roxy.tv or on Sky Q. Get Roxy free on the apps rail now.
Good morning, you're watching The Great British Breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. The time has just gone 7:35. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said the UK is in a comparably better position than this time last year, but New Year's Eve revellers should remain cautious. There are concerns that other countries in the UK will flock to England as the restrictions are more relaxed. This comes as health leaders warn that up to 40% of vaccine appointments are no-shows. So, how do you go about celebrating New Year safely? Well, Sanjeev Krishna is a professor of molecular parasitology and medicine at St George's University in London. Good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you very much for your company this morning. So lots of people still planning, by the sounds of things, to go out tonight. How can they make sure they stay safe?
Morning to you, Ellie, and all good wishes to you and your viewers for the coming new year. And thank you for having me. Now, I can see the pent-up demand that you've demonstrated earlier in people wanting to get out and about and really celebrate the 2022. Now, where we are now compared to a couple of years ago with COVID-19, it's a different world. We have new tools, we have prevention, we have treatments, we have diagnostics. And the landscape has changed. But on the other hand, also the virus has changed. So in this war between virus and humankind, what we're at the moment is in countries all over the world, an enormous increase in the cases of Omicron. And that's going to put, whatever happens, that's going to put enormous pressure on the systems that have to cope with infections and treating patients. So to come back to your really important question, what can people who are desperate to get together and celebrate, what can they do? I think really it's very much down to being very, very careful, because this virus is ferociously transmissible. It gets about as quickly as any virus that I think we've seen before. So one thing, the right kind of masks. Wear FFP2 masks. When you're planning your celebrations, make sure that the groups are small. Keep it outside as much as possible, because ventilation is key. And, I'm assuming that everyone who's been offered a vaccine has been keen to get a booster shot, because we do know that with those booster shots, the risk of severe infections, the risk of even going into hospital is reduced very, very significantly compared to those who aren't vaccinated. So to stay safe, do a test. There you have it on the screen, a lateral flow test. I don't understand how UK government hasn't managed to get us enough tests. We've got the manufacturing capacity in the UK. We've got the expertise. The tests are independently validated. What's happened to the delivery and supply of tests? These are key tools in our management of COVID-19. So do all those things, and I think you're managing the risks as well as you possibly can.
Really good practical advice there for people who are heading out tonight. And from what we understand of Omicron, we know it's milder, but it is, of course, more transmissible. And I think there will be concerns about people from Wales and Scotland and even Northern Ireland coming into England to party tonight. What do you think we could see in terms of the data in the next week of those people heading back on those trains or on those flights with Omicron?
Well, Ellie, I mean, that's the risk, isn't it? You are then superseding these infections. The spreading events are multiplying when people get together and then go back. I think all we can do is to take the most sensible precautions that we've discussed, and please, whatever happens, don't shoot the messengers. Those of us who are in healthcare, our main concern is to make sure that the risk of infections are minimized. And if people are rigorous and nevertheless can have a chance to enjoy themselves, that's what we're all aiming for. But this is a very, very catchy virus. And so we must bear that in mind when everyone goes out, and protect our vulnerable. You've got elderly, you've got people, you've got children who are now showing increased frequency of infection and hospitalizations, and you've got pregnant women. So let's all keep the vulnerable populations in mind, get vaccinated as soon as possible, because we are going to see a surge coming up towards the end of January, and take all the precautions that individuals can take, especially keeping groups small.
Professor, it's fantastic to have you on the programme this morning. Thank you very much for joining us, and Happy New Year to you as well. That was Professor Sanjeev Krishna from St George's University in London speaking to us there. Now, two cross-channel operators say French COVID rules have been tightened, and it's bad news for British people as they can no longer travel through France by road to reach their homes within the EU. P&O Ferries and Eurotunnels say changes were made by the French on Tuesday. This is another frustration for Brits wanting to go on holiday, which pretty much sums up our 2021. But my next guest can hopefully spread some optimism about travel in 2022. Well, Simon Calder, we all know who Simon Calder is. He's the travel editor at The Independent. Simon, good morning to you. Thank you very much for your company, and Happy New Year to you.
Good morning, and to you and your lovely viewers from a very, very blustery Lancaster railway station, where I've come to see just what the scale of rail cancellations is, and I'm afraid it's quite high. If you're travelling by train today, please check in advance. Pretty much every train operator, where we heard from excellent Professor Krishna just then about the spread of Omicron, well, it's most definitely affecting the train operators. They simply don't have enough crew, so we're seeing widespread cancellations pretty much all day, and that will be going into the new year. And just to pick up on the French story, there's been a bit of good news overnight. This particularly concerns people who have the right of residence under the Brexit withdrawal agreement to live in a foreign country and to reside there. If they are British people, they are now being allowed through on Eurotunnel and P&O ferries into France to get through France to places like Belgium, the Netherlands and Germany, although Germany isn't going to be opening up for the rest of us till Tuesday. It's all a bit mad, actually, because the French brought in a ban on the Brits, on the 18th of December, because they were worried about Omicron. Well, effectively, they are now ahead of us in terms of the number of infections. So all a bit mad. But I'll tell you what, in terms of optimism, I am fairly confident that with Omicron spreading, let's hope there not being any huge increase in the number of hospitalizations, that the world will probably come to live with this horrible virus, and things will start easing up a bit.
I hope so, Simon. It's really good to hear some optimism there from you. And as you were just saying, France and Germany, it's been very complicated over the last few weeks, but it looks as though that will start to lift in early 2022. A quick one from you. If you're looking at a holiday, what's the best places to be booking in early 2022 that aren't going to get cancelled?
Well, it's impossible to know, of course, and that's such a good question because, of course, many people are actually away at the moment. They're going to come back to this dreadful testing regime where you've got to have a pre-departure test, then a post-arrival PCR, and then quarantine, and that's going to add typically £100 to the cost of your trip. So a lot of people are very cautious. However, I can't think of anything better than heading away somewhere sunny. Now, a lot of people going to Mexico because that's pretty relaxed in terms of getting in. A few restrictions when you get there. Spain, of course, remains extremely popular. The Canaries are actually the place you want to be, and also for guaranteed sun, I'd say the resorts like Sharm el Sheikh in lovely Egypt. Now, the thing is, I'm not booking anything until just a couple of days beforehand. I think in recent times, my quickest booking was 2.5 hours before the flight actually left, because I don't want the further you book in advance, the more things could possibly go wrong. But having said that, it is going to be a great year to be a traveller. Fantastic deals around. We're seeing quite a lot of cancellations by the airlines, the holiday companies. Whoa, hang on, particularly over it's all very, very windy here. Particularly over the Christmas, over January. But there are some great deals to be had. I just hope people who love skiing, as I do, will be able to get away. That's been very tricky in terms of France and in terms of Austria. But I think they will be opening soon, and we'll all be able to get back to the way we were. Having said that, I've been ridiculously over-optimistic all the way through, and half your lovely viewers are going to be shouting at the screen saying there's a pandemic on, don't travel anywhere.
Well, I love your optimism, actually, Simon, and you're doing very, very well there with all the wind and the rain. So get inside and have a nice warm cup of tea, I think. Thanks very much, Simon, for that year review. And I do hope it gets a lot easier to travel. That's something I really have missed in 2021. We love to hear from you, so do get in touch. Perhaps you want to touch upon that travel story that we were just talking about there, gbnews@gbnews.uk. It's just along the bottom of your screen there. Now, another look back at the year that was, but this time, let's look at it as the year of revelations. Meghan Markle revealed that she was silenced, not silent, in her insightful interview with media mogul Oprah Winfrey. Our government was revealed to be made of social distancing rule breakers, clinched in passionate embraces with colleagues, and enjoying rather boozy business meetings during lockdown. And the coronavirus revealed its new ugly head in the form of the Delta and Omicron variants that ravaged the UK this year. Did we see enough revelations to last us into 2022? Well, I hope so. It's been exhausting, hasn't it, over the last year? We're joined now by the fabulous Andrew Eborn. Andrew, it's great to have you with me. It's nice to have some company. I'm all alone here
You're looking
today.
so lonely up here.
I know. It's a new one for me.
But you are right. This has been the year of revelations.
Certainly
and
has.
Hasn't it? Quite extraordinary. I can also, talk about the year of revelations, exclusively reveal here that between 2015 and 2018, the British government carried out various secret pandemic exercises.
Okay.
We talk about failure to prepare, prepare to fail. Well, we talk about history repeating itself. There were a number of these, and I want to thank my good friend, Professor Viswanathan, for highlighting this. There were basically a number of reports where they looked at things like Ebola, influenza, and highly infectious diseases. And each one of these pandemic exercises gave rise to multiple lessons to be identified. The problem is this, is that those lessons weren't followed. For example, there was one where they talked about in Exercise Alice, is the main one, which looked about coronavirus and what they should be doing for that. And that was commissioned by the Chief Medical Officer, Dame Sally Davis at that stage, and it involved NHS England, Public Health England and Department of Health. And basically observers were also invited from Go Science and the Cabinet Office, where the Health Secretary at the time was Jeremy Hunt. What they basically discovered is that PPE availability, training, border controls, contact tracing and isolation were all going to be issues. Lots of questions to be unpacked in the new year when they look at what should have happened. Prepare to fail, that's what's happened. If you don't prepare, that's what's going to happen. There were reports which looked at this. Other revelations, if you have a look at that side, Meghan Markle.
Yes, let's
Meghan Markle,
there,
I'll tell you what, it always used to be, a lot of dignity with the royal family, it used to be never complain, never explain. Absolutely. And that used to be the mantra, and the Queen, with ultimate dignity, has exercised that forever. And her mother before her, that's when it was first introduced. This year has been nothing but revelations. We talked about that extraordinary interview with Oprah, Meghan and Harry, which took place on March the 7th. Can you believe that? All that sort of time ago. Two big things in there. One about concerns and conversations about how dark Archie's skin might be. That's the big revelation.
Yeah.
And the other thing about mental health and the cry for help. And nobody listened to that cry for help. Both of those are really, really serious issues. My problem with it is this, is that, like, as you know, as a seasoned and glorious professional journalist, you have to ask the follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Who, what, why, when, how? Because if you don't do that, everybody's damned by the generality.
But what was so interesting about that interview was there weren't the follow-up questions, were there? There were these allegations, and it ended there, which left all these questions still going into 2022. Do you think we'll hear more from Harry and Meghan?
Well, I can tell you.
Oh, there you go.
It's a
You
year
know
of
that as well.
revelations. We'll do that. I can tell you, well, obviously, Harry's got a book coming out.
Right, yeah.
So I imagine that, and that book, and I always remember talking to anybody who writes a book, they say the best thing to write is the little index at the back, where you can get all the list of names you're talking about. Because that's the first thing people go to. Harry will have all sorts of revelations, because that's what you need.
Sure.
So it's going to be unpacked there. What I found extraordinary as well is we talk about media and the way that media report things and media manipulation. And we live in a world of sound bites and master media manipulators. What I loved about the Oprah interview was the avocado story. And you might remember that. The difference in how the press portrayed Meghan and how they portrayed Kate. And it came about with this avocado story. And they basically said there were headlines in the British media contrasting them with the far more positive stories about Kate than they were about basically Meghan. And it was basically whenever Meghan was eating an avocado, they talked about the fruit was linked to water shortages, illegal deforestation and environmental devastation. So terrible stuff. Do you remember that?
I do remember this.
But the story, a separate story about Kate, pregnancy, they sort of said it's basically to help with morning sickness. So a really positive thing. What I loved, and it was a funny line, give her credit where credit's due. Meghan responded, that's a really loaded piece of toast. So credit where credit's due, which is going to be good.
No, it's true, but Kate, I think, did also have her own hard time, didn't she? I mean, she was called Waity Katie. I think the press have also been cruel to Kate in their time. But Andrew Eborn, we have to leave it there, I'm afraid, but really fantastic to have you on. You're going to stay with us for the rest of the morning as well.
Here forever.
Keep me company. Please do. Thanks very much. Well, we've had to leave it there, but we also are joined this morning by John Smith, a sports agent and entrepreneur, and Morgan Schondelmeyer, who is from the Adam Smith Institute. They're here going through the front of this morning's papers and to discuss today's top stories. So, John, let's start with you. What's caught your eye this morning?
I want to do something positive because the papers, bless them, are full of negativity. And I'm
Let's do some positivity.
I'm flipping through some stuff. The FT, M&A surges to record. There's a lot of cash at the top of the world, $5 trillion worth of mergers and acquisitions. And the bank scooped $157 billion in fees, apparently. So it's nice to see that Santander have, thrown out $130 million as a gaffe to their customers.
That's a remarkable story, isn't that one?
I'm not sure how many will be giving it back, but, you know, it just kind of made me smile. And the other thing that made me smile, and by the way, I have no problem with people making lots of money. It's nice when the people that don't have a lot of money actually get some as well. I love this thing in the where is it? The Express this morning. They're looking at flying taxis. How great would that be? You know, getting across London when we all go back to work. They're looking at Uber are looking at a flying taxi, 12 minutes to cross London.
Wow.
Silly things.
Would you take a flying taxi?
I'd like to say yes.
Good.
I think.
I think I'd be a bit too scared to take a flying taxi. I think sometimes taxis are scary enough in London, just with all the traffic. Morgan, what's been catching your eye this morning?
I hate to put a damper on all of the optimism, but we've been doing quite a few stories on the continuing migrant crisis. Yes. And I think it's something we're going to see going on into 2022. And I think there's just a few points that could be made when we're talking about this, because I feel like a lot of the story is, why migrants choose to come here, what they experience when they get here. And something that we've been working on at the Adam Smith Institute and with a lot of other great organizations is something called the Lift the Ban campaign. So it's not really well known, but asylum seekers and migrants are banned from working in the UK while their claims process, and they have to have their claim processing for at least a year before they can apply for the right to work. During that time, they were given £5.66 a day to survive. So when we kind of talk about the migrant crisis, and we talk about how there's these economic pull factors bringing migrants into the country, that's actually not the case. France has a much more amenable system to migrants, and the migrants aren't staying there. So we need to look at the actual underlying factors for why migrants are choosing to risk their lives to come to the UK, where they're not allowed to work. They're given very small amounts of money to subsist on, subpar housing, all of that. So I think the Lift the Ban campaign is something that I'd like to raise awareness about. It asks for asylum seekers and migrants to be allowed to work, which takes them out of isolation, helps them integrate with their communities, gives them, better language skills, and keeps them out of criminal activity. If you don't give people the right to legally work, they're going to be driven to criminal activity to earn money, and that's just the facts. So this is something that I wanted to mention to bring awareness about in 2022, this policy, which could really change the lives for people who are already here, and I don't think is going to increase the number of people coming.
And I hope Priti Patel or someone at the Home Office is watching, because what she's just said, what Morgan has just said in 3 minutes, puts such a colour on that diagram that most of us don't know and don't understand. And it made absolute sense, and I would support wholeheartedly what you just said.
And Morgan and John, thank you very much for your thoughts on that story, because I think it will continue to be a big story here in 2022. Just a quick point from both of you. We haven't got very long left. New Year's Eve, obviously, today. What are you planning to do tonight?
I am going to my dear friends, the Delanes, with my wife and kids, and we're just going to celebrate the end of a difficult year and try and be very positive about 2022. So that's my wish for everybody, a healthy, happy and positive 2022.
Morgan, what about you?
Having some friends over for a bit of food and some games, and hope to catch some fireworks, go up to the
She's cooking. She's cooking.
I cannot I don't think I can claim that. I have to give that to my partner. So.
What's on the menu?
We're doing it. Oh, this sounds very pretentious. We're doing some tapas, but just little nibbles. So.
Oh, well, lovely. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. I hope you really enjoy your New Year's celebrations tonight, and you are staying with us for the rest of the morning. OK, coming up, Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill gives us a breakdown on everything that's happened in politics this year, from Matt Hancock's strong and stable embrace to Boris's Peppa Pig world blunder. We will cover it all after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning and welcome to your New Year's Eve weather forecast. Here are your headlines. Through today, it's breezy, the wind's picking up later, some brighter skies as rain fades away. Now, the weather front down towards the southeast will clear quite quickly through the morning, but this one across the central belt of Scotland will continue to deliver clouds and some outbreaks of rain, but even here we'll see the rain waning through the afternoon. Wherever you are, though, it's going to be a breezy one. So through the morning, that rain clears towards the southeast, some brighter skies, but cloud racing across the country with a keen breeze. The rain across central and southern parts of Scotland, northern England will tend to die out in situ, and drier skies for Northern Ireland, brighter moments for the far north of Scotland. But look at these temperatures through the afternoon. 9 across the far north, but elsewhere where we see that milder air coming in around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, temperatures we normally see during April rather than at the end of December. So if you are stepping out through New Year's Eve evening, many areas will be dry. Yes, a lot of clouds, some spits and spots of rain where the clouds thick enough, particularly over the hills and mountains. And then more rain around midnight, just clips the north and the west of the country. The winds, though, will be a main feature of the weather. Gales likely across more western parts. And generally speaking, it will be, again, a mild evening and a mild night. So through New Year's Day first thing, we'll see some brighter skies, central and eastern areas of England and Scotland. This band of showery rain will just travel quite quickly across the country. So certainly through the afternoon, it will clear the shores of eastern parts of the country. And further west, we'll see some brighter skies, but it will be windy wherever you are. A real significant breeze coming up from the southwest, and temperatures typically through the afternoon, again around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius. So that's the picture through New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. Through New Year's Day, as I said, brighter skies either side of that showery rain band, and then things turn colder from the north with gales in the south on Sunday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, it's Friday the 31st of December. It's just gone 8 o'clock on your New Year's Eve morning. It's your great British breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. Here's what's coming up this morning. We'll be taking a look back at the year that was 2021. From the migrant crisis in the Channel to the royals, to travel and the world of tech. We'll have experts guiding you through what changed in 2021 and what to look forward to in 2022. Bars, pubs, clubs in England are gearing up for what could be the biggest party night of the year. But with restrictions in place in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, will everyone be having a happy new year? And with a warning from health leaders that up to 40% of booked vaccine appointments are no-shows, we'll be assessing the state of the coronavirus pandemic as we head into the new year. As always, please do get in touch. I'd love to know how you're planning on celebrating the new year. We do love to hear from you. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk. Good morning. Thanks for your company. This time last year, many toasted to the end of 2020, thinking the worst of the pandemic was over. But with over 12.7 million people catching the virus this year and over 150,000 people dying from it, it hardly felt like the end of the worst of COVID. Well, is there any hope that things will return to normal in 2022? Well, here to hopefully give us a little hope is James Woodhousen, a visiting professor at London South Bank University. Good morning to you, Professor, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Are we in a better position now than we were this time last year? Give us some optimism, please.
Well, it's a mixed picture, isn't it? I think we've learned a lot. We've learned that COVID takes many forms and that the hypocrisy about it and the alarmism about it really is quite enormous. I think hopefully we're going to move into the new year with a lot more common sense and a lot less hysteria about COVID. I think we're wiser now, and therefore we're not going to buy the latest panic dreamt up by the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, and indeed the Tories and their press.
Professor, what is the picture with Omicron right now? I mean, we're being told that it is a lot milder, it's certainly more transmissible, but not many people are going to get seriously sick. That gives us some hope, surely.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very early days. You know, I spend my time saying we must not be so risk averse. At the same time, the sample in South Africa of the people who managed to deal with it so well and indeed were defended against the Delta virus, it's only 13 people. Whenever we're looking at science, Ellie, and psychological tests as well, we've got to look at the sample sizes. You know, there's no such thing as the science. There's a lot of contested experiments, and there are lots of different sample sizes. You can't trust the peer review process. So we have to be, you know, cautious but optimistic about this news from South Africa.
And what do you make of the devolved administrations having such different rules to each other right now? You've got restrictions in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, nothing in England as of yet. I mean, how much is that about public health and how much is that playing politics, do you think?
I think it's all about public relations. It's not about public health. I think the most striking thing is how the establishment media say, you know, oh, Britain's an outlier, England's an outlier compared with the other three nations. Another phrase we've had to adopt in the last year or two. You know, we're the odd man out. We should be following Nicola and Mark in Wales and so on. It's an absolutely ridiculous proposition. England has a much larger population. What the measures that have not been taken in England or not taken by Boris recently are not producing the tsunami of deaths and hospitalizations that the leaders in Scotland and Wales would make out. So I think the way in which everybody has suddenly said we in England must be subordinate to them, that's really a new development.
Professor, what do you make of this call to cut the isolation period to just 5 days following the example of the United States, which had done just that? And the reason why you do that is because of staff shortages, one of the reasons. There is one paper estimating today that a third of NHS staff could be absent tonight due to isolating. What do you think about cutting down the isolation period?
It's got to be right, really. I mean, I know the NHS staff are under great pressure. I know there's a lot of self-isolation going on. I think cutting the time from 7 to 5 days is absolutely essential. The downside that came out of that would be pretty modest, I'm fairly sure.
And, lots of people will be asking, 2022, end of the pandemic. Do you think this could be the year that we start to see the beginning of the end?
I think that's possible. The Omicron news is very good. I think, if I may just say, Ellie, I think the most striking thing that has hit me is this morning's Times newspaper has a lead article saying, COVID doesn't like parties. And I think one of the most depressing things about what could happen next year is we'll see more of this, COVID knows this, COVID doesn't like that, as if we ever did that with the flu vaccine. Did we ever say flu doesn't care about whether you drop into a coffee shop or stay at home, it'll get you all the same? We never did that. And yet we've now conferred upon COVID a kind of mystical status, that it knows things, that it knows how to hurt us, that it has cognitive function. And I think that really, along with the sort of idea of the science, we're putting things on a pedestal, idolizing them, bowing down to them. And this isn't human. It denies us our agency, and it's a great mistake. So look out for people saying that. I might add that on the climate question, everybody uses the same sort of idea that, the Gaia, the Earth is having its revenge. Nature is, knowledgeable about our faults and will get angry. Such a stupid perspective and so anti-human. That's, I think, the political fallout from COVID and our attribution of cognition to this disease is much worse in some ways than the kind of fatalities that we'll endure next year. They'll be bad, but the fear factor and the subordination factor is going to be much more widespread.
Really, really interesting to get your thoughts there, Professor, and a Happy New Year to you. That was Professor James Woodhousen. He's a visiting professor at London South Bank University. Well, let's take a quick look at what else is going on today. There is no need for any new lockdown measures to tackle Omicron. That's according to an NHS boss who says severe cases are remaining stable despite COVID case numbers hitting record highs again yesterday. Chris Hobson, head of NHS providers, said health service bosses are warning that people should be careful in how they react to the daily COVID hospitalisation numbers. Yesterday, another 189,213 positive tests were recorded by the UK Health Security Agency. Up to 40% of booked vaccine appointments are no-shows, health leaders have warned, as the government said it has met its target of offering every adult a booster jab by the end of the year. The NHS Confederation says it is encouraging to see people coming forward and getting their COVID-19 jabs, but says it has heard reports that some sites are only a third full, despite cases of the Omicron variant continuing to rise rapidly. Russia's Vladimir Putin has warned his US counterpart, Joe Biden, that imposing new sanctions over Ukraine could lead to a complete breakdown in relations. In a phone call late on Thursday, the Russian president said such sanctions would be a colossal mistake. In the latest effort to defuse tensions over Ukraine's eastern border with Russia, Mr. Biden told Mr. Putin that the US and its allies would respond decisively to any invasion of Ukraine. Police have launched a murder inquiry after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death in a park in South London. Officers were called to Ashburton Park in Croydon on Thursday night and gave the boy first aid, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The death is the 29th killing of a teenager in London this year. A US school teacher says she spent 5 hours in self-isolation in a plane toilet after testing positive for COVID-19 mid-flight. The teacher says she felt her throat hurt whilst travelling from the US to Iceland just before Christmas. The teacher took a lateral flow test she had brought with her and remained in the toilet for the rest of the trip, but don't worry, food and drinks were brought to her by staff. And a fundraiser is limbering up for a marathon year as he prepares to run 26.2 miles every day of 2022. This is amazing. 52-year-old Gary Mckee hopes to raise £1 million for Macmillan Cancer Support and Hospice at home in West Cumbria by taking on his biggest challenge yet. Mr Mckee will set off from his home in Claytormore in Cumbria on New Year's Day for his first of 365 runs. Thank you very much for your company. Now, if anyone's going to look back on 2021 and think, that could have gone better, it might be Boris Johnson. His party's defeat at the North Shropshire by-election last month was really the cherry on top of a pretty terrible year for the Conservative Party. Plagued by government sleaze allegations, Christmas party scandals and the Prime Minister's own personal gaffes, are the Tory party going to command the respect that they want in 2022? Well, here to help me make sense of it all is Spite Online's chief political editor, Brendan O'Neill. Good morning to you, Brendan, and a Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year to you too.
So you've had a very busy year. I'm sure you haven't been short of content for your columns. What are the stories that have really stuck out for you?
Well, I think the big story, as you've just mentioned there, is really the unravelling of Boris Johnson's government. And I think that's really been taking place over the whole year, in slow motion almost. And it's really gathered pace towards the end of the year with the Christmas party scandals, the Owen Paterson affair, the North Shropshire by-election, of course. And that was a really significant by-election because this is a part of the country where 60% of people voted Leave. There are lots of older voters. There are lots of voters who don't have a university education. These are the kind of people who supported Boris Johnson's Conservatives in the 2019 general election, and now he seems to be losing the support of some of those people. So I think we started to see the shine come off Boris Johnson's government, and they are going to struggle a lot in 2022.
There are already conversations being had about a replacement for Boris Johnson. If that does pass, it will be Liz Truss is in talks for that, as is Rishi Sunak. What are your thoughts on either of those as successors?
Well, the polls suggest that Liz Truss might not be as popular with voters as she is with some people inside the Conservative Party itself. I think one of the reasons is that she's a bit of a free marketeer. She's a bit of she's a bit gung-ho on those kinds of issues, whereas a lot of the Tories' contemporary voters, particularly those from the red wall areas, they don't really share that view. They are in favour of public spending. They're in favour of huge amounts of investment in their communities. They're in favour of tough border measures, for example, and all those kinds of things. They're not really interested in the freedom of movement or the freedom of exchange or the freedom of the market that defines some people in the Tory party. So I think Liz Truss might struggle more than she expects. Rishi Sunak is a little bit more popular. He's seen as having been a steadying hand during the pandemic. He ensured that people got the wages they needed during the furlough period. He did Eat Out to Help Out, which I know became controversial after a while, but people found that popular too. So I think he's got more of a chance with ordinary voters. But whether Boris will actually be replaced in 2022, that's still a huge question mark, of course.
And of course, lots of people would say, well, Labour Party doesn't offer any opposition. I mean, who are the Labour Party and what do they stand for in 2022?
Well, that's the main thing the Tories have going for them at the moment. The fact that the Labour Party is such a lost cause. It's such a confused party. It doesn't really know what it stands for. Keir Starmer is obviously trying to drag it away from the Corbyn years and turn it back into a bit of a centrist middle-class party that decent people can vote for. The problem I think Keir Starmer faces fundamentally is that he was the architect of Labour's second referendum policy. He was the man who said to the country, we're going to ignore your vote for Brexit and hold a second referendum. And that is the thing that turned off lots of working class Labour voters. That's the thing that turned off the red wall voters. I think it will take a long time for voters to forgive the Labour Party for essentially trying to trash their vote of the 2016 referendum. So Keir Starmer has a massive uphill struggle to make those inroads with working class voters. And just as Boris Johnson might not be the man to carry the Tory party through the next few years, I'm not convinced Starmer is the man to win the working classes back to Labour.
Brendan, one of the biggest stories of 2021 has been those recent lockdown parties. Do you think we've heard the last of that, or are we awaiting some more scandal to break?
It's hard to tell. I mean, the Daily Mirror in particular seems to have a party scandal expose almost every week. So we'll have to wait and see. I think that was, I feel slightly torn on this, because on the one hand, it was genuinely shocking that they were making rules that the rest of us have to live by, while seemingly breaking those rules themselves. And people really dislike this culture of one rule for us and another rule for you. So that's part of the reason why the Tory party is struggling at the moment. But on the other hand, I think some people in the media have obsessed over these Christmas parties a little bit too much. And when you see the Mirror and the Guardian breaking down who was sitting where during a Zoom quiz, or how close were people sat together in the Downing Street garden, I think people are going to tire of that kind of approach too. I think most people want a serious discussion about the political future of this country, a serious discussion of how Brexit Britain is going to fare in the next few years. They don't want this obsession over what politicians do behind closed doors. So that scandal will drag on, but I think the media might overplay its hand a little bit.
Brendan, really good to have you on the programme. Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much for your company this morning, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
That was Spiked Online Chief Political Editor Brendan O'Neill. Coming up, billionaires have been launching into space all year, but will there be a chance for us normal people to leave the atmosphere in 2022? A space expert and I will discuss after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning and welcome to your New Year's Eve weather forecast. Here are your headlines. Through today, it's breezy, the wind's picking up later, some brighter skies as rain fades away. Now, the weather front down towards the southeast will clear quite quickly through the morning, but this one across the central belt of Scotland will continue to deliver clouds and some outbreaks of rain, but even here we'll see the rain waning through the afternoon. Wherever you are, though, it's going to be a breezy one. So through the morning, that rain clears towards the southeast, some brighter skies, but cloud racing across the country with a keen breeze. The rain across central and southern parts of Scotland, northern England will tend to die out in situ, and drier skies for Northern Ireland, brighter moments for the far north of Scotland. But look at these temperatures through the afternoon. 9 across the far north, but elsewhere where we see that milder air coming in around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, temperatures we normally see during April rather than at the end of December. So if you are stepping out through New Year's Eve evening, many areas will be dry. Yes, a lot of clouds, some spits and spots of rain where the clouds thick enough, particularly over the hills and mountains. And then more rain around midnight, just clips the north and the west of the country. The winds, though, will be a main feature of the weather. Gales likely across more western parts. And generally speaking, it will be, again, a mild evening and a mild night. So through New Year's Day first thing, we'll see some brighter skies, central and eastern areas of England and Scotland. This band of showery rain will just travel quite quickly across the country. So certainly through the afternoon, it will clear the shores of eastern parts of the country. And further west, we'll see some brighter skies, but it will be windy wherever you are. A real significant breeze coming up from the southwest, and temperatures typically through the afternoon, again around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius. So that's the picture through New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. Through New Year's Day, as I said, brighter skies either side of that showery rain band, and then things turn colder from the north with gales in the south on Sunday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News home and security editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Good morning, you're watching The Great British Breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. The time has just gone 24 minutes past 8. It's New Year's Eve, but only partygoers in England will be able to hit the nightclubs to ring in 2022. It puts the country at odds with Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, where clubs are unable to open their doors this evening. This is a welcome sigh of relief to the hospitality trade in England, with pubs, bars and restaurants hit hard in the run-up to Christmas due to mass cancellations over Omicron variant fears. But with the government still advising caution on mixing, will people still be going out to celebrate? Well, our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley has sent this report.
Nightclubs in England, like this one in Yorkshire, will be throwing their doors open to revellers on New Year's Eve. That's in sharp contrast to the rest of the UK, where limits have been placed on social gatherings and mass events. It's a welcome relief to club owners here, who have already lost a large proportion of trade due to the pandemic.
New Year's Eve is our everything, isn't it? So, you know, that's where most our takings come to get us by January, February, March until it fires up again. So, yeah, to stay open is just, thank God for Boris. Thank God I'm not in Wales and thank God I'm not in Scotland, because then people just seem to be doing a lot of showboating. It's not for the good of... There's more than the virus, isn't there? There's people's mental well-being. And I know if I'm not working and not occupying my brain, it's just, I'm not the same. I would never thought somebody like me could get down, but I do. We're way well down on where we were, so we're just in survival mode at the minute, and luckily I've got some assets, so we've been selling my car and selling things just to keep the club going, because everything I've worked for 60 or 21 years, it's all tied up in this club, so if I lose this, you've just lost your whole thing, haven't you? Your whole life of all the hours and hours and hours I've worked to get this far. I've lost everything, so I'll do whatever it takes to keep it going. It's a privilege to be able to do what I do, and I've done it since I was 16, and it's just been an absolute privilege. I'm no good at anything else. I couldn't put a nail in the wall, to be fair, but I can give you a good time. So yeah, that's my thing.
The Nighttime Industries Association provides a voice for the nightclub sector and has welcomed the decision for clubs to remain open in England for one of their biggest nights of the year.
I do believe that the
the government, Westminster, are going to have to step up and give more support to the businesses that have been affected most and at the sharpest end of the pandemic. And the worry now is, while we appreciate that New Year's Eve we have to celebrate, and I think that's a big part of people's sort of lift in terms of hope, both customer and for industry. There's still a long road ahead of us, and we've got a lot of work to do to safeguard these businesses, and the government have got to play their part in that.
But with the government still issuing caution over social mixing, how many people will actually be going out to celebrate the start of 2022?
We're probably just going to get our close friends together and spend time with them.
Nothing much has changed.
I don't normally go to pubs and clubs now, there's too many people, so...
No, nothing's changed. I'll be with my sister and my mum at my mum's house watching Jules Holland.
I'll still be going to school on New Year's Eve to have a drink. Not to get drunk, just to have a drink.
I'll be staying in. I don't like going near anybody. I wear my mask all the time and I can't do any more.
Nothing changing really. We're not going out on the evening, but that's something we do every year. We don't tend to go out on New Year's Eve.
We usually stay in, get takeaway, watch a bit of telly, have a drink. Yeah, really casual.
COVID hasn't changed anything. Still doing what we would always do. We've had Christmas with the family, and it'll be just inside two of us for New Year.
The government will continue reviewing COVID data and could still introduce restrictions in the new year. But for now, punters here can go out to clubs for drinks and dancing, provided they produce COVID passes showing they've either been double vaccinated or have a recent negative test. Anna Riley, GB News.
That's Anna Riley, our reporter there for us. Do let us know what you're spending your New Year's Eve doing tonight. It's GBViews at GBnews.uk. We do love to hear from you, and I'll be sharing some of those later on in the programme. Lots of you have been in touch, not only on New Year's stories, but also on the topics that we've been discussing today. Helen has been in touch on email. She really enjoyed our guest, James Woodhousen, who was on earlier. And she said it was a sensible and interesting discussion. Please keep it up. Thank you very much, Helen, for being in touch. Eileen's been in touch about this vaccine no-show story. Apparently 40% of vaccine appointments are not being attended at the moment. She said she couldn't attend her appointment. She did speak to her doctor's surgery, and she thinks this could be down to poor administration on the part of the NHS, rather than people simply not showing up to their appointments. Greg has also been in touch from Essex. He said he had a vaccine appointment booked, but he went early to get the vaccine ahead of the booked appointment. He says there was no way of cancelling that booked appointment, and he wonders how many of these cancellations or no-shows are a result of that problem. Very good point, Greg. So thank you for getting in touch on email, and do keep those coming in. It's at the bottom of your screen there. It's GBViews at GBnews.uk. Now, I think it's fair to say that 2021 was a big year for space travel. The Perseverance Mars rover landed. The first planet outside our galaxy was potentially spotted. And Star Trek's Captain Kirk, William Shatner, was launched into space, along with a few billionaires. All of this whilst those of us still on Earth were confined to our houses. So what could next year hold? Well, here to give us his reflections and predictions is space expert and friend of the channel, Andy Loud. Andy, good morning to you and a Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year to you. Thank you for having me.
Andy, so much has been going on in space this year. It's been a magnificent year. What's your highlight been?
That's a difficult one. Obviously, Perseverance has been fantastic on the surface of Mars, discovering base rocks, so we can actually get some good data about the evolution of Mars itself, the possibility that there was volcanism and a lake there. Water was discovered, of course, underneath the surface of the canyon regions of Mars. That's a big discovery as well. So that was quite fantastic. Discovery, of course, as you said, a planet outside our own galaxy is absolutely an astounding discovery. Partly from the discovery itself, but partly for the technology that was used to actually do it. And that's quite an important thing to always highlight when we talk about space science and and people say we're looking at things out there. It's the technology that's useful that then gets filtered back down to the ground. So that's good. But the space industry, private industry, literally taking off, I think, has been a very important development this year. And the reason for that is because people like Musk have brought space technology 30 years forward, to be quite honest, because of their gung-ho attitude. And again, it's the technology from that which actually feeds back into the system, which is really important. Because unlike governments, which tend to be a bit static and they've got regulations and they've got slow moving, and you know what it's like, industry things, the government industries, everything takes slow. They have to have grants, and it takes such a long time, and the money is always going to be there. But when you're a private sector, you've got to be a bit more careful of what you do. You've got to be a bit more focused, and I think that's pushed things forward a little bit better than it would have done otherwise. In fact, it's put if you like, a spike up the backside of the government agencies, thinking, wait a minute, we can utilise this properly. And I think that's really been quite important to actually do that. I think Musk has done a great service to that. With it, of course, comes the issues of him dominating space, dominating low Earth orbit. That's something that I think the regulators need to start looking at. And I think, if anything, he's pushing, really, not deliberately, but by accident, he's pushing really for a world space organisation to come together, a combination of all the organisations to start to legislate to organise space. And of course, it's quite possible that, this time next year, we could be talking about his spacecraft flying around the moon, which is quite staggering. He's going to beat the official bodies to the moon quite staggeringly, the way things are going. So that's been a big boon to see what's happened this year as well. And the space science, though, has been tremendous. I mean, it's unbelievable what's been going on. We've got the Chinese landing on Mars as well, which has been an incredible development. We've got other nations joining in exploration of space. Hubble telescope still making discoveries. And of course, just recently, the launch of the Webb telescope, the next generation space telescope, which is on its way now to reach its Lagrange 2 point to actually observe deeper into space than ever before. That's a big moment at the end of the year. You couldn't get a bigger ending to the year in space science than the launching of that. And of course, the launching of spacecraft to asteroids. We've got 2 spacecraft launched towards asteroids, one to actually crash into one, which is going to happen next year as well, to see if we can actually deflect an asteroid from actually colliding with the Earth, protecting our planet. Space science is simply partly about that. So it's been quite a dramatic year on discoveries, and obviously opening the door of what we're going to look forward to next year is going to be unbelievable. I can tell you that. We're going to be blown away. This time next year, we're going to have this same conversation, and I'm going to be sitting here starry-eyed with the discoveries that have started to be made, one from the Webb telescope, more data from the Perseverance rover, the data from the asteroids is going to be absolutely staggering, and the fact that we're going to see the private sector carrying the torch into space.
Andy, you are absolutely fantastic. We love having you on the programme. Thank you so much. That year in reflection in space, that's Andy Lound there for us. He's a spaceflight and astronomy commentator. Coming up, one final reflection, this time for a year in sports where Britain shined in the Olympics and in the tennis, but maybe not so much in the cricket. That's after this.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Dan Wootton, join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, you're watching The Great British Breakfast with me, Ellie Costello. The time has just gone 8:37. Thanks very much for your company. Now, Bitcoin prices hit record highs in 2021 after trebling in value in the space of just 5 months. But the choppy and directionless, that's direct quote, cryptocurrency is making it hard for economists to predict its future growth, says one expert. Bitcoin is currently an unregulated commodity, but will that change next year? Well, here to give his predictions for Bitcoin in 2022 is Peter Levchenko, Managing Partner at Ascension Capital. Good morning to you. Thanks very much for joining the programme and Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year to you too, and thank you for having me.
What a year for Bitcoin. We just heard there it has trebled in value in just 5 months. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new asset class. It's an extremely volatile market, and it's attracted many speculators, some professional speculators and some retail speculators with hopes of obviously future potential gains. And, volatility in the market remains pretty high, and, it remains pretty tricky to forecast even for professional speculators.
And Peter, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, it's unregulated. And there's a warning from the Bank of England this morning that says that Bitcoin could become worthless. Tell us a bit more about that warning.
Yeah, I think obviously the regulators in the UK, and specifically the Financial Conduct Authority, which is the FCA, are just trying to warn the retail participants, that would be the man on the street, about the risks involved in investing and trading in cryptocurrency. And I think, the fact that it's basically unregulated, it actually makes it more tricky because, it creates opportunities for malicious behavior in the market and malicious advertising. And I think the public at large is probably underestimating the risks involved in such investments, and whenever we speak or advise on investing in cryptocurrencies, I always suggest that you should be prepared for, an 80 or 90% loss if you want to be a holder in this market, because that can realistically happen. I mean, Bitcoin's had, 50 to 80% pullbacks, at least 2 or 3 times over the last 3 to 4 years. So this is a realistic prospect. And I think that, obviously investing in this market, you should be approaching that with caution.
And Peter, when you think of cryptocurrency, you think of the name Elon Musk. It's funny, we're just talking about space, and he was also the name on everyone's lips in terms of the billionaire space playground that he seems to be a big part of at the moment. But he is very much a part of this crypto market. How much is he responsible for the dips and falls that we see in the market?
Well, he's pretty much, he's made a huge impact on the crypto market, and he has infatuation with one of the cryptocurrencies called Dogecoin, which is just a meme cryptocurrency. And by the way, that's one of the best performing assets this year globally. He's pretty much been the sole driver of, retail interest in the market. I mean, he would publish a tweet on Twitter, and that would be driving the price of Dogecoin, several several percent, at times even maybe 100%, during the beginning of 2021. I think has become a significant force, and he's attracted, a big following amongst retail investors into cryptocurrency. And also, at the start of last year, sort of mid last year, I think he was one of the big, drivers of institutional adoption of cryptocurrency, where you've had several large institutions entering the market. And I think a lot of that was driven by confidence in the market that was kind of portrayed by Elon and other visionaries, from the Silicon Valley. You've got also Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy and a few other big institutions that have really suggested that, crypto is a market to take seriously. So, there's definitely a big following, and there's still a lot of Dodge cryptocurrency traders that await what Elon's going to tweet, on his Twitter feed every morning. So it's definitely a factor.
Peter Levchenko, thank you very much for your time this morning. That was Peter Levchenko, who's the managing partner at Ascension Capital. Now, we've been reflecting all morning on the year that was, but what about the year that will be? So far in 2022, we can expect a rollout of the COVID vaccine tablet, a celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and the film Spider-Man: No Way Home becoming the biggest blockbuster in pandemic history. Well, joining us now is friend of the programme, Andrew E. Bond. Tell us what the future holds. You're a futurist, so you will know.
Well, what a friend of the programme. I love this programme. It's got to be good. And it's been a marmalade dropper of a year, hasn't it? I mean, exciting things have happened. And we should end the year celebrating those successes, because that's going to be the bedrock upon which we launch to the Roaring Twenties, which you and I are going to advocate. Which
we need some of that, don't we?
And so anniversary, 8th of December was the anniversary. We were the first country in the world to get an approved vaccine and put that into the arm of the 90-year-old Margaret Keenan. You might remember that. First country in the world. Well done,
Christmas
UK.
Jumper, remember that?
Do you remember the second person? First man?
William Shakespeare. How can you forget?
How can you forget William Shakespeare? So he was the same. What I loved about it, the Twitter sphere, you people in the Twitter sphere were just brilliant. So the taming of the flu, come on.
Oh, yes.
Two gentlemen of Corona. They love it. Oh, but one of my favourite, if Margaret Keenan was patient 1A, then Shakespeare must have been 2B or not 2B. Oh, yeah. I love it. Or exit followed by a bear, which is a reference to a sort of chemical company, that sort of pharmaceutical company, but glorious stuff. Also, we're the first country in the world to get out the pill in terms of COVID and
this magic pill.
So well done to the UK about that sort of stuff. It has been an extraordinary year in terms of every industry, from Squid Game, introducing people to Korean drama. We're going to see more of that in the new year. There will be more revelations. As I said on this programme a number of weeks ago, it's only the start of these different photos. Dominic Cummings was sort of saying, come on, the comings and goings. He knows what went on. And there's nothing worse than a PR scorned. And there's Spin Doctor. There's all sorts of stuff. I would ask the question, why are these things coming out now?
Yes.
Because Matt Hancock, May the 6th, didn't come out till the end of June.
Why is people hanging on, and then, when perhaps they want something done for them,
I think they definitely do.
Push out their own agenda.
There's definitely their own agenda. Ask those questions, question everything. That's what we're going to do in 2022. We're going to look at those revelations. One of the biggest stories, and we've got Bruce Springsteen, extra spring in his step, $500 million for selling his catalogue rights.
Incredible, isn't it?
That's going to happen more in the music industry. We're going to see more NFTs. Kings of Leon did their album on that sort of side. The progress in technology is going to go leaps and bounds. That's the great thing about this new era. Hands, face, space, apart from Matt Hancock with his hands and face. The space race is superb.
Yes, we're just hearing.
James Webb, that glorious telescope which has been launched, that's going to start sending back pictures. So we could discover parts of the planets that people have never seen before, the beginning of time itself. And what I love is that NASA have appointed a priest to help us with aliens who are God's creations as well, of course. One of the biggest stories, which we don't talk enough about on this channel, it's talked about everywhere, is the launch of a channel called GBNews.
Yeah, I have heard of it.
Which you might have heard of, which is brilliant. And I'll tell you what, we deserve more positive publicity, because everybody out there is having a pop. And I think the reality is one of the most exciting things in broadcast for the last 25 years, quarter of a century. What I also love is that from January the 4th, we're going to be available both on DAB radio as well as that. So you can listen. It's going to follow us everywhere. We are a speedboat in an ocean of super tankers. And I think we should absolutely embrace that. Going forward, I think giving people a voice, the unheard, giving them a platform. And I have to say the experience at GB News has been brilliant.
Aww.
Give it a shot, and you've been fantastic.
Oh, and Andrew, you are always fantastic, and you are a friend of the programmes. Thank you very much for joining us and for keeping me company today. I've been very grateful having you at the end of the desk. A nice friendly face, and thanks so much for your time. So that was Andrew Eborn there with the revelations that will be coming in 2022. Now, a new law will be introduced, making it a criminal offence to knowingly arrive in the UK without permission. This year, 27,000 migrants have attempted to cross the Channel, triple the numbers seen in the year before, with 36 people sadly losing their lives. Well, despite the dangers, hundreds more have arrived this month, including 70 people on Christmas Day alone. So, what is the solution to this Channel migrant crisis? And will more illegal crossings be made in 2022? Well, Dr. Rakib Eshan is a research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, and he joined me earlier.
I think something that's missed quite a bit, Ellie, or rather what's overlooked, is the treatment which is being dished out by the French policing authorities. I think that's something that's not discussed very much at all. I think that more generally, contrary to what many people may think, especially on the liberal left, of our politics, migrants who are crossing the Channel illegally, they are treated with generosity when they arrive in Britain, especially when it comes to the kind of accommodation that they are provided. So there are incentives in place. There is, of course, the reality that those who are illegally crossing the Channel, a notable portion already have people within the UK that they know, that's including family members. So there's various pull factors when it comes to discussing the illegal Channel crossings, and they need to be addressed.
Dr. Rakib, what is the answer to this then? We just heard Tom Pursglove, the Minister for Justice and Tackling Illegal Migration. He's talking about this new law that will be introduced, making it a criminal offence to knowingly arrive in the UK without permission. He thinks that's going to go a long way to tackle this crisis. But the sense that I'm getting from you is you very much feel like Britain is this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and perhaps it's the incentives that migrants get when they get here that need to be taken away.
Well, I think we need to definitely have a discussion on those incentives. I think also we really have to tackle the people smuggling infrastructure that we have in place in the UK. I definitely feel that the National Crime Agency, for example, should be provided with more resources to really get to the bottom of those people smuggling infrastructures. I would like to see much tougher prison sentences, or rather have a tougher sentencing regime introduced for those who are found guilty of participating in people smuggling infrastructures in the UK. Because what they're essentially doing is profit. They're making very sound profits, making a great deal of money by facilitating this process of illegal migration into Britain. So I think there's various courses of action which can be taken when we're looking at the illegal Channel crossings. But I do feel, of course, we have to look at the kinds of accommodation that is provided. And I do feel that, contrary to what many people say, I do feel that there's a great deal of generosity being shown. And I think that's problematic. And I think there's a good number of people in the British mainstream who see that, for example, we have military veterans who are living without homes, but yet when they see this kind of accommodation being provided, they feel that's fundamentally unfair, and I think they have a point.
Well, that was Dr. Rakib Eshan. He's a research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, and he was speaking to me earlier. Now, sport has been a saving grace for lots of us during this year, and there has been a tremendous amount of action to watch on TV to keep us entertained. We had the Tokyo Olympics back in July, a big one for England football fans when they beat Germany 2-0 in the Euros. 18-year-old Emma Raducanu became a tennis superstar when she won the US Open, and that's only scratching the surface. Well, Harry Harris is a sports journalist, and he joins me now. Harry, great name. Good morning to you, and a happy new year.
Morning. How are you doing? Yes,
very well.
Quite right. It's been very interesting in a year of sport, and you picked out some of the great highlights there, of course. But I think the year will be remembered for all the things that went wrong as well. You know, having the Olympics with no fans, for example. I mean, how sad was that? And sport really interrupted, as everything else in life has been, by the pandemic. And I think also there's a downside to what's been happening in sport, I'm afraid. You know, an enormous amount of broken promises about the government's promises to eradicate or at least do something serious about the abuse that sportsmen, particularly footballers, in the year have had to suffer online. And here we are at the end of the year, and I don't really see the kind of promises that have been implemented.
What was your sporting moment of 2021? What stands out for you?
Well, you mentioned Emma winning the tennis in New York, and I think that lifted everyone's spirits more so than anything else. You know, I've followed football 40 years, and that's been my speciality. But funnily enough, on the Daily Mail, when I first started there, I covered Wimbledon and tennis. And it's a sport I do like to follow, and what she achieved at such a young age and in such great style and with such a great personality. And of course, she won BBC Sports Personality of the Year. I think in a year where everything was a bit of a downer, that rose for me well above everything else.
I think it's interesting as well, talking about Emma Raducanu, is, you know, her open conversations about her mental health. And similarly, Ben Stokes in the cricket. It was a year where athletes were speaking about it quite openly.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good thing. You know, sports people's sexuality as well has become more to the fore. And we've got to be in favour of a more open society. And that's why I talked about the lack of action against abuse for sports people online as well. I think it's refreshing that they can come forward. I think they help an enormous amount of people when they do that. And it was my privilege to be involved in a book with Peter Shorten and his wife Seth Shorten, talking about gambling addiction. His 35-year gambling addiction and how he was able to come out of it. And that can be an inspiration for so many other people as well. It's important that sports people take a lead in this.
And, you know, looking back on the year that was, the Olympics in Tokyo certainly was unprecedented. And that's got to be the year of 2021 as well. As you mentioned in your first answer there, no crowd, no spectators. It really was very strange, wasn't it? But a welcome watch still for many of us that were still stuck in lockdown.
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think it really is pitiful to have gone ahead with such a major global event with no fans present. I think sport it is for the spectators. It is for spectator participation. They create the atmosphere. It's what it's all about. It's fine that we could all watch it on TV. Yes, it helped pass the time a bit, but it really is something that will be looked back on and. In sheer amazement that the authorities who run sport allowed that kind of thing to happen. And I think it's still happening now, even today. You know, here we are embarking on the new year, and we still can't learn from what happened when, you know, 60,000 people went into Anfield to watch a Champions League match. And it was quite obviously a super spreader for the virus. And here we are going into... matches over this festive period and still allowing fans to go into the grounds. You know, why isn't the Premier League being halted for a period of time as a circuit breaker to protect people? It really is the fact that in this country we do not have proper leadership in sport, and we do not have a government that understands how to protect sport and the spectators that follow sport.
Harry, sticking with football, I haven't got long with you, but it is the 80th birthday of the legendary Manchester United manager Alex Ferguson today, and United could do with him back, couldn't they?
Well, 80th birthday of a living legend, and again, been my privilege to have written a book about his 80 years, which is out now, obviously. Sorry to plug another book, but there you go. I spend an awful long time interviewing 80 people, finding 80 untold stories about him for his 80th birthday. And extracts are appearing in today's papers, of course. And, it's someone I've admired from the very day he walked into Old Trafford, and what he achieved will never be repeated,
I have to leave it there, I'm afraid. We've reached the end of the programme. I'm so sorry to cut you off. It is the end of the programme. But thank you so much for coming on to talk to us. That's Harry Harris. He's a sports journalist doing a roundup for us of the best sporting news in 2021. Coming up, today's front pages discussed with my lovely panel. That's after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning and welcome to your New Year's Eve weather forecast. Here are your headlines. Through today, it's breezy, the wind's picking up later, some brighter skies as rain fades away. Now, the weather front down towards the southeast will clear quite quickly through the morning, but this one across the central belt of Scotland will continue to deliver clouds and some outbreaks of rain, but even here we'll see the rain waning through the afternoon. Wherever you are, though, it's going to be a breezy one. So through the morning, that rain clears towards the southeast, some brighter skies, but cloud racing across the country with a keen breeze. The rain across central and southern parts of Scotland, northern England, will tend to die out in situ, and drier skies for Northern Ireland, brighter moments for the far north of Scotland. But look at these temperatures through the afternoon. 9 across the far north, but elsewhere where we see that milder air coming in around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, temperatures we normally see during April rather than at the end of December. So if you are stepping out through New Year's Eve evening, many areas will be dry. Yes, a lot of clouds, some spits and spots of rain where the clouds thicken up, particularly over the hills and mountains. And then more rain around midnight, just clips the north and the west of the country. The winds, though, will be a main feature of the weather. Gales likely across more western parts. And generally speaking, it will be, again, a mild evening and a mild night. So through New Year's Day first thing, we'll see some brighter skies, central and eastern areas of England and Scotland. This band of showery rain will just travel quite quickly across the country. So certainly through the afternoon, it will clear the shores of eastern parts of the country. And further west, we'll see some brighter skies, but it will be windy wherever you are. A real significant breeze coming up from the southwest, and temperatures typically through the afternoon, again around 14 or 15 degrees Celsius. So that's the picture through New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. Through New Year's Day, as I said, brighter skies either side of that showery rain band, and then things turn colder from the north with gales in the south on Sunday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton.